Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the April 22nd regular meeting of Council. I'd like to first recognize that we are gathered on the traditional territory of the Snuneymuxw First Nation. Our clerk tonight will be Ms. Sheila Gurry. Tonight we also have, I believe, we were going to have Councillor Brown attending via video, but I understand there may have been some power issues on Gabriola, so I don't see him yet. Tonight's regular meeting of Council is being held in accordance with the Community Charter and Council Procedure Bylaw 2018, number 7272. If during the meeting any member of the gallery has a question regarding an agenda item, please write down your name and the agenda item on the question period sign-up sheet by the table on the double doors to my left. Please note that questions are for agenda items only. Before we start the meeting, I would like to take a few moments to remind those who are attending in person about the rules of decorum for all council and committee meetings. A council meeting is intended to be a place where democracy can freely take place in a respectful and safe manner. The council chambers is a workplace, and there are considerations council and staff must make to ensure that a safe work environment exists in accordance with WorkSafe BC regulations. To support this, disrespectful conduct will not be tolerated, so we ask there be no cheering or jeering or other outbursts from the gallery at any time. This will ensure that anyone speaking, whether it be a delegation, member of council, or staff, is not interrupted and can make their point freely without distraction or fear of ridicule. In instances where a speaker is being inappropriate or has exceeded their time limit, their microphone will be cut off. Similarly, if there are outbursts by any person in the gallery, they will be asked to stop, and if they do not comply, they may be asked to leave as permitted under Section 133 of the Community Charter. If necessary, Council may call a brief recess in order to reset the environment of the Council chambers. It is our belief that if everyone is respectful of these basic considerations, this meeting and future meetings will be more effective in furthering the business of the City of Nanaimo. The first item on the agenda is the introduction of late items. Ms. Gurry, and we have a few, please.
Thank you, Worship, and good evening, Council. We are adding PowerPoint presentation titled 2024 Quarter 1 Tourism Nanaimo Updates to Agenda Item 8A. Adding delegation previously noted as Michael Gesselbrock, now being replaced by Alec McKenzie and Grace White to Agenda Item 10B1, Consent Item Improving Pedestrian Safety in the South End of Nanaimo, which will be a separately considered consent item. We are adding delegation from Morgan Burt and Mitchell Meredith, Urban Solutions Architecture Ltd, to Agenda Item 12H, rezoning application number RA491 and property disposition number LD3857, and adding notice of motion from Councillor Perino, re pickleball courts, under notice of motion on the agenda, Your Worship, and that's everything.
Thank you very much. Motion for adoption of the agenda is amended. Moved Councillor Thorpe, seconded Councillor Perino. All those in favour? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. Motion for adoption of the minutes is circulated. Moved Councillor Perino, seconded Councillor Armstrong. All those in favour? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. Mayor's report. I'm going to start off on a very happy note tonight. For those of you who have been acquainted in the last few years, it's been quite a few years, with Bill Sims, also known as William Sims, although I suspect that was used when he was getting into trouble, and that's what his mother would yell. He's nodded sagely across the field. He has been a longtime advocate for responsible risk management, demonstrating intelligence. He is a man who encourages his staff to be analytical, innovative, and find ways to mitigate risk while limiting the impact on their levels of service. He has been a very strong advocate, regularly attending Municipal Insurance Association British Columbia conferences. He encourages staff to attend as well so that we have and retain a high level of expertise with the people who work with him in public works. He is spoken of very highly by everyone who has been involved with him, from staff, from MIABC, and from those on council, I think, who can all say we are very proud of him. It is for this reason tonight that I am happy to publicly present what he knows he has certainly earned and deserves, and that is a significant recognition by the Municipal Insurance Association of British Columbia. And it is an award known as the Terry Pyle Effect Award to Bill Sims. In other words, someone who can affect things in a positive way. And it's presented to him for his leadership, mentorship, and collaboration demonstrated by actively supporting and promoting other members of the MIABC community. He's a leader in asset management for the city, well-spoken. Sadly, he is as modest as he is tall. And as I have said many times in this chamber, modesty is a highly overrated quality. But nevertheless, it is with great delight that I present formally to Mr. Sims, who I'm going to ask to come forward to the council table with the award, which is a rather attractive piece of wood with beautiful writing on it, and congratulate Mr. Sims. And speaking of the head of Public Works, it's the annual catch basin cleaning program to begin on April the 15th, 2024. Important and necessary work. The announcement was made back on April the 10th after the previous council meeting. Crews in the city of Nanaimo are set to clean, listen for it, 10,000 catch basins. Beginning on Monday, April the 15th, Public Works staff started. They'll be cleaning out the city's inventory of storm water catch basins. They'll start in the Duke Point area. They'll work their way north along various streets. It involves large equipment, staff working on the road. So we ask you to please cooperate, respect public safety, their safety, approach with caution, obey traffic control personnel's directions. The annual program is expected to be complete by August. Delighted also to remind everyone of the City of Nanaimo's presentation of Poetry in the Park, a new project with Nanaimo's Poet Laureate, which brings together poetry and nature. We're pleased to present this as an innovative new project with Nanaimo's Poet Laureate Kamil Parmar, adding poetry to the park. While in the park, look for lines of poetry with attached QR codes at 5 scenic locations and enjoy poetry in the park. By using personal devices to access QR codes, viewers can enjoy virtual poetry readings by our Poet Laureate in corresponding locations throughout the park. The beauty of the surrounding environment is enhanced, obviously, by what you will hear from her, and encourages a new perspective on ways in which the parks can be enjoyed, highlighting intersections between recreation and culture. I want to remind everyone as well that the provincial government has passed the Short-Term Rental Accommodation Act that restricts short-term rentals, STRs, to provide stronger tools for municipalities to return more housing units to the long-term rental market, which, as we know in town, is extremely challenging for many people. The following changes take place over the next year. On May the 1st, 2024, short-term rentals will only be permitted in a primary residence. The host will be required to display a valid City of Nanaimo business license, and it applies to all advertising platforms, including Airbnb, VRBO, Booking.com, etc. In the summer, advertising platforms will be required to share short-term rental host data with municipalities and will be required to remove listings where a valid business license is not displayed. And late 2024, early 2025, the province will create a short-term rental registry. All short-term rental operators will be required to register, provide proof of primary residency, and display registration numbers in addition to the business license. And advertising platforms will be required to remove any host listing that does not display a provincial registration number and a business license number. Several members of council, including myself, Richard Harding, our General Manager of Parks and Recreation, amongst his other titles as Deputy CEO, had the great pleasure of attending at the new artificial turf fields at Harewood Centennial Park on Saturday. These 2 new artificial turf fields were declared ready and open for play. They'd been used that very morning. Some of the highlights of the new fields include LED lighting, paved walkways, covered benches, a media coaching booth, which will be ready in the summer of 2024. Bleachers that will be installed shortly with 400 seats for family, friends, and fans. And new parking is accessible from Howard Avenue as well as a soon-to-be-complete parking along 7th Street. These fields can be used literally, depending on demand, 24/7. Should there be demand, rain or shine, and are game ready. These two fields are the 4th and 5th artificial fields in Nanaimo. They were constructed with money from the province of British Columbia, BC's Growing Communities Fund, money from the Government of Canada's Investing in Canada Infrastructure program, $700,000 from School District 68, the remaining funds from the City of Nanaimo. The district's athletic programs, including John Barsby High School's award-winning football team, God bless Coach Stevenson, will regularly use the East Field. Other organizations can now book the fields through Parks and Recreation at the City of Nanaimo. There was some concern raised by some folks around environmental impact, but I would happily tell people that in order to get 6 times the use, we would have had to disturb and eliminate the habitat of various creatures, eliminate a great deal of forest in order to achieve the same effect, potentially 6 more parking lots, 6 more sets of lighting standards, etc. So this is a very good news announcement for the young people in the area, particularly those who are attending John Barsby High School. Now, this is not our responsibility, but I hope to save a few phone calls to City Hall. The BC Ministry of Forests will conduct aerial spray treatments on Vancouver Island and Salt Spring Island through the spring to combat spongy moths, an invasive species that damages farms, forests, and orchards. The insecticide used for the treatment is 4A-48B. It is used in organic farming and is naturally present in urban, agricultural, and forest soils throughout the province. Approximately 130 hectares of land are set to be sprayed in Nanaimo, with the first treatment scheduled for May 10th. The location of the treatment zone is the Hammond Bay area. I am aware that the aerial spraying can be quite early in the morning, so it may be disturbing the sleep of some of you. Anyone needing more information can call the toll-free number 1-866-917-5999 or visit www.gov.bc.ca/spongymoth, where you can see a map of the spray area. And coming up this Sunday, it's the National Day of Mourning that is observed annually in Canada to pay tribute to those who have lost their lives, been injured, become ill, or suffered tragedy at work. It's a day to remember those who have suffered because of their work. It is also a day to renew our collective commitment to improving workplace health and safety and to preventing further injuries, illnesses, and deaths. According to the Association of Workers' Compensation Boards of Canada, there were 993 workplace fatalities in Canada in 2022, including 941 men, 50 women, and 2 non-binary people, as well as 33 young workers between the ages of 15 and 24. In addition to these fatalities, 348,747 lost time injury claims were accepted across the country. That sadly represents an increase of 75,000 cases compared to 2021. The CUPE, Canadian Union of Public Employees, Workers' Day of Mourning flag will fly at half-mast at City Hall on Friday, April the 26th to Monday, April 29th. The Canadian flags at our city locations, gateways, will also fly at half-mast in support of the city's commitment to the promotion of health and safety in the community and a vision of safe and a healthy work environment. We are also approaching an anniversary that is observed in this city quite appropriately, representing what was and continues to be, sadly, the second worst industrial accident in Canadian history, and that is the explosion at the No. 1 Esplanade mine on May the 3rd, 1887. That was located fairly near the current cruise ship terminal. It exploded after gas or dust igniting, killing 150 men. Only 7 men survived the explosion, all of them working in the mine's engine room. The Esplanade mine was a maze of tunnels that extended under the harbor's ocean floor to Saskatchewan and Protection Island. The first explosion at 5:55 p.m. was 260 meters below sea level in what was known as the diagonal shaft in the city's largest mine, and it was the result of a poorly placed charge that ignited a pocket of coal bed gas released from a previous charge just minutes before. It served as an ignition to a massive amount of coal dust. The second blast was coal dust igniting on other slopes as the explosion rocketed through the underground shafts for almost a kilometer. The wooden head form built high above the pit caught fire and burned to the ground. The underground fire burned for 2 weeks. It took until July, this having happened on May the 3rd. It took until July before the last of the bodies could be recovered. Those 7 men remain somewhere beneath the Nanaimo Harbor to this day. To put this tragedy in its context as we complain about our lives today for various reasons, Nanaimo's population was approximately 2,000 people, and 150 people died in this explosion. 46 women lost their husbands, 126 children lost their fathers. The mine lost 25% of its employees. So as you think of workplace safety on April the 28th, be reminded that this city was once the site of one of Canada's most terrific industrial tragedies. And it behooves us to be grateful, as we surely learned through COVID, for the work that all the people in our country and around the world literally perform day in, day out going to work. And in this case, 150 people didn't come home as a result of the work. Thank you for listening. Ms. Gurry, in terms of rise and report, we have one item that we can release tonight, please.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. At tonight's closed meeting, 2024, April 22nd, Council moved to increase the base operating budget for IT by $144,300 in 2024 and an additional $68,910 in 2025 in the 2024 to 2028 financial plan. So that will be included in the financial plan coming to you, before you in the next few weeks.
Thank you very much. And just for the benefit of the listening audience, this represents the city's recognition of the dangers of cyber insecurity, if I may phrase it that way. We know that many institutions, businesses, and other municipalities have been victims of cyber attack, and the costs are absolutely horrendous. It is a wonderful source of money for criminal activity and extortion, so this is a very important and significant change. The next item are presentations. We have Carly Perboom, Executive Director, Tourism Nanaimo, who's going to provide a presentation regarding Tourism Nanaimo. And that is via Zoom, I understand?
Yes.
Good evening, and thank you for attending tonight.
Thank you, Your Worship and Council. It's lovely to see you all. I'm sorry I'm not there in person this evening. Again, thank you for providing me this opportunity to present this evening to you all and to provide an update on the first quarter of 2024 for Tourism Nanaimo and where we are focusing our efforts this year. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Thank you. Tourism Nanaimo has undergone a bold and exciting rebrand to showcase the uniqueness of the growing and eclectic Vancouver Island community that we call Nanaimo. From beaches and parks to cafes, breweries, and one-of-a-kind shops and restaurants, Nanaimo is a culturally rich seaside community made up of creatives, families, and entrepreneurs. Nanaimo is often overlooked as a tourist destination by visitors passing through town on the ferry or from folks with misconceptions about our city. With the launch of Tourism Nanaimo's rebrand, Tourism Nanaimo is hoping to change that. The purpose of rebranding Nanaimo is to spread positive awareness, increase resident sentiment, and create a buzz and generate excitement about Nanaimo and positive positioning for ourselves, not only as a great place to live, but as a desirable place to visit. So without sharing too much before the launch, I do want to share some of the essence of this brand and the intent of it. Next slide, please. The logo is simple, bolded text, and without added graphics. The purpose for this is ease of use. The opportunity to provide varied treatments of the logo and to ensure that no matter what message is in market, what events we attend, that it is clear We're representing and showcasing Nanaimo as a whole. The brand is intended to adopt easily by our partners and integrated into our varied services, such as visitor services, meetings and conferences, sports, etc. A close partner with us in this work has been the city's economic development organization, the Prosperity Group, who understands the power of aligned messaging while also ensuring that our message is cohesive no matter where we are. Next slide, please. The brand lends itself to being colorful, bold, playful, and inclusive. And the intention is to carve out a distinct look that will break through expected visuals for Vancouver Island. Next slide, please. The brand launch will be May 13th with the slogan, "It's Nanaimo Normal." Around every corner is something new and unique to be experienced, and what might raise an eyebrow somewhere else, like raising motorized bathtubs in the harbor, simply is the normal here in Nanaimo, and we want to celebrate that. Next slide, please. The new brand challenges preconceived notions and breaks down barriers and provides a refreshing alternative to the hyper-curated and perfected images that we're used to seeing, not only with tourism, but on our screens each and every day. Next slide, please. The new campaign puts a spotlight on the unique, celebrates the city's eclectic character, and puts its unconventional style front and center. The brand is to showcase the people who live here proudly and to show a thriving and vibrant city, to delve into what makes Nanaimo a place for everyone. So in a nutshell, that is what we're going to be seeing on SkyTrains in Vancouver, on buses along the island, and in advertising and marketing in the coming months. Next slide, please. Tourism Nanaimo in the very different ways. A bit playful. This was supposed to be a video, but I'm not sure that it's going to work for this evening. So we'll just go to the next slide, please. So Team Nanaimo, what we've been up to, success doesn't happen in silo, and Tourism Nanaimo is committed to working with the established Team Nanaimo approach. Next slide, please. Meetings and conferences are key, and they are a key piece of Nanaimo's tourism ecosystem. Tourism Nanaimo works closely with partners including Vancouver Island Conference Center and the accommodation sector to attract and book and host local, national, and international events in Nanaimo. To put some things of this in perspective, in 2023, 38 conferences and conventions alone developed almost 25,000 delegate days and $10 million in economic impact for our city. Total attendance of all events measured participant days was almost 60,000. Next slide, please. In 2024, we have scheduled a total of 35 conferences thus far. During the first quarter of this year, Team Nanaimo successfully hosted 91 events, including 6 conferences. And looking ahead, we have still another 29 confirmed conferences scheduled for the remainder of this fiscal year. With Tourism Nanaimo actively pursuing new opportunities, we've submitted 10 conference bids so far in this first quarter alone. Next slide, please. Sports tourism is an important part of tourism in Nanaimo, and we as a community have seen firsthand the importance of sport, recreationally and competitively, and we're home to more than 40 amateur sport organizations. Sports tourism has a ripple effect that benefits our local community, small businesses, and offers cultural vibrancy. In the coming 2024-2025 year, we are looking forward to hosting 10 provincial sporting events and 4 national or international sporting events, depending on how those go. In the first quarter of this year, we submitted an additional 4 bids to host large-scale sporting events in Nanaimo. And all of the above does not touch on the myriad of sport that we are supporting alongside the city's recreational department and the Nanaimo Hospitality Association. Hosting events is only one part of sports tourism for us, and we know that we need to continue to be a part of the bigger picture when it comes to parks and trails development, connection to larger events like FIFA, and being prepared for opportunities for local sport groups and their development and understanding their needs. The importance of sport to youth in our community cannot be underrated. A wonderful example of this is the 2 Nanaimo-born and bred track and field athletes that will be representing Canada in the 2024 Paris Olympics, Ethan Kansberg and Olivia Lundman. and we're looking forward as a community to supporting and cheering them on. This seamlessly brings me to my next point. Next slide, please. Collaboration. Next slide, please. At Tourism Nanaimo, we recognize that our success hinges on fostering meaningful partnerships and actively working in collaboration on a myriad of incentives. In the first quarter, we've been focusing on clearer communication to partners about conference dates, opportunities, and ensuring that our partners have the information and data that they need in order to have key conversations with their partners. A great example of this is our work with the Nanaimo Airport, supporting their efforts for routes and connections, and also with the Port Authority around their efforts in diversifying port business. This past year, we have seen exceptional growth and changes to our local tourism landscape. A flight route connecting Nanaimo's airport to Kelowna, Hello Ferries now is in full swing, and more eateries and retailers are expanding and or opening. This type of growth isn't just about convenience. It's about opening up a whole new way for people to travel and connect in Nanaimo, not just from a leisure perspective, but for business and also for residents. And it's that momentum that they're hoping to carry forward into this next quarter. It's been successful, and there's quite a few things in the hopper for second quarter. I feel like I went a little bit fast there, but I hope that the essence of what we're trying to share with you in this first quarter was captured. Next slide, please. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have this evening about any of the information that I shared. I know that I provided it in advance, so I'm happy to answer questions.
Thank you very much, Ms. Baraboo. Councillor Thorpe's first off the mark.
Thank you very much, Your Worship, through you to Ms. Baraboo. Thank you very much for the presentation. And I just wanted to start by saying that I think it's correct to say that during the past 12 months, roughly, Tourism Nanaimo has basically been reformed, and we're seeing a rebranding. A lot of very exciting things happening, and those have come largely under your leadership as a relatively new employee as executive director. So I'm very impressed with the work that you've been doing. I want to say that personally, and I want to thank you for your efforts. It has been absolutely a pleasure for myself, and I think I speak for Councillor Perino as well, to sit on the tourism board. So again, thank you, and along with Mr. Corson, of course, who is our city representative as well. I did have a very specific question, if I may, Carly, and that is one that I've had a couple of people ask me about, and that is the relocation of the Visitor Information Center to the ground floor of the conference center. That was a decision that the tourism board made. It was not your decision alone, but the board decided on that. I'm just wondering how that has worked out in your opinion. Has that been a good move?
Absolutely. I think we're going to see the positive impacts of that come to fruition this summer with Hello Ferries. We have cruise and being more a part of the business community in the center of where we are hosting so many different events and conferences. The move takes a little bit to get settled and figure out all the nooks and crannies, but it's working exceptionally well. We're seeing a real uptake in people using the services and working with our staff. And I think it'll be a way for us to engage more productively with the community as a whole.
Thank you very much. To me, it does make sense to have the Visitor Information Center in the heart of the downtown, where most of our visitors are going to be visiting and touring. So again, thank you for your good work.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Councillor Thorpe. I'm not seeing any other questions. Much appreciated tonight. Good luck and keep up the good work.
Thank you so much. Have a great evening.
Thank you. The next presentation is the 2023 Development and Housing Overview. Mr. Holm, you're going to introduce this and will be followed by Ms. Brinkman and Ms. Rowett.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Good evening to you and Council, and this is an exciting opportunity for planning and development area to provide an update overview on the activities that have taken place over development-wise over 2023, give you an update on where we're at from a development perspective as well. And this year we're combining, we usually do this as two separate presentations. We're combining the development overview with our housing strategy implementation, our housing focus action update. So Ms. Rowett, Lania Rowett, Manager of Current Planning, is going to present on the development update, the activities on the development side. And then Ms. Brinkman, Lisa Brinkman, the Manager of Community Planning, is going to follow up that presentation with an update on housing strategy implementation actions, and they tie together nicely. So I hope you enjoy this. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Rowett.
Thank you. Thank you, Worship. Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm pleased to be here to give this overview, and just wanted to have in your minds a key message tonight, really, that housing projects continue to be at the forefront of development approvals and happening throughout our city, as many I'm sure have noticed. Even on the first slide here, just to note, this was a significant project, the Marriott Hotel in our downtown, and that also was one project that received occupancy in 2023. So looking at some of the statistics for units created, we typically provide stats on single-family dwellings, and here we do see a change in development. This shows a continued decline on single-family starts with 124 units, and just to note that it's not surprising, increasing housing costs of construction, as well as fewer lots being created through subdivisions, as we see different forms of housing provided through multifamily projects. But with our single-family starts, we do see continued provision of secondary suites. In fact, continuing to be on trend with 60% of single-family homes containing secondary suites, providing a much-needed form of housing. When we break down our residential units by type, we have, again, you can see a clear distinction between the lower density, single-family, and the multifamily, although slightly trending down, still well above. So much of that construction, which also influences our building permit values, as you'll see in a moment. And breaking down the unit types, just with some numbers, we saw in 2023 the creation of 912 multifamily units, 124 single, and 122 suites. Our construction value by permit type, again, no surprise here. We see multifamily largely above other values. Public institutional developments did spike in 2022. We had some significant projects, including our #1 fire hall, and so we saw an increase there. So not as much in last year, but definitely some significant projects that have been recently built. And looking throughout the city, just a comparison from 2023 and the year prior, the color dots on the map in red are the single-family housing starts, and the blue dots represent multifamily. So again, you can see development occurring throughout the city, and housing particularly clustered. Again, another trend that we're seeing is in our urban centers and along our major corridors, so opportunities for people to live closer to schools and transit routes and parks and recreation amenities. So that trend has certainly continued into 2023. And just to quickly highlight some of the top construction projects throughout our city. This project is in the downtown, so this is the TELUS Living project on Wallace Street, and it consists of 2 towers, 195 units with underground parking, and it's well underway, and this project is valued at just over $45 million. This is a key project in the downtown, and I think it certainly, as you go by the site, this block is seeing a lot of change, and it's going to have a significant impact in the heart of the downtown and very near to the Old City Quarter. Another key project just upslope in the downtown at 388 McCleary Street. This is an example of a seniors apartment development, and just over almost at $37 million, a significant project in the Old City area. And very near to where I just mentioned the TELUS Living project at 340 Campbell. This is the corner of Wallace and Campbell Street, 163-unit rental apartment building. And in the north end, the northernmost gateway of the city, actually, there are 3 existing buildings, and this is the subsequent phase to that development to provide additional 2 buildings of rental housing. And these are a 5-story, 75-unit apartment building, just over $17 million, and the second building as well with another 74 units. So in total, just over about 150 units there to complement the existing 150 units. So again, putting housing very near the Woodgrove Urban Center services. And looking at some of the development applications, This is where we see more on the planning side. This is the design stage. We continue to see, not surprising, a slight decline in the number of applications. Again, I think as we saw inflation and costs rising, but still a significant amount of complex development applications. So the colored bars are the number of applications. We had 37 development permit applications in 2023, and the line is representing the average number of units. So we are still seeing both a mix of the larger scale residential projects as well as more infill residential projects, and a number have come to you in proposals throughout the Old City area, for example. And just some of our statistics, again, very comparable throughout the last 5 years, with a provision of development permit approving 964 units last year. So as they move through the design stage, they will be moving towards construction building permits. So we can see what's coming down the pipe. And other statistics that we, other applications, sorry, that we deal with through development approvals is our Board of Variance and Variance Permit applications. These are applications that are under existing zoning and are seeking a relaxation to the zoning bylaw. From a subdivision perspective, we again see a change in development forms here. So as I mentioned earlier, not as many single-family subdivisions occurring as in historic previous years. What we do see is more of the multifamily projects resulting in more strata developments, and in active files, both the 199 strata lots being created there, as well as sorry, I want to mention the airspace parcels. So with regard to some of the change we're seeing in subdivision, not only moving from single-family lots to multifamily lots and stratification, but also seeing more complex subdivision applications, including more airspace parcels. And with those larger projects, typically they are, as I mentioned, in existing urban areas, so we're not creating or extending new roads, so we have less roads creation, but what we're doing is providing improved frontage works in existing areas, so we're seeing more sidewalks and related elements there. And a few other building permits to highlight just briefly throughout the city. Oh, sorry, hang on a second. So more development occurring in the south end of downtown, 45 Halliburton Street. That project was a 38-unit multifamily development. Many have probably seen in that area, there's a number of projects along Halliburton Street, so seeing a lot of renewal in that area. 1615 Northfield, this is along a major corridor, 11-unit townhouse development, again within what was a mixed-use corridor. And 521 3rd Street, also an area along one of our key corridors and close to amenities and other commercial development at 525 3rd Street. So 521 3rd Street was part of a multi-phased mixed-use development, and this providing 171 units of multifamily development. And 6340 McRobbs Avenue is a project up in the north end. If you're familiar with Sentinel Drive, there's several strata developments that have occurred over a number of years there, and this is the first of 2 phases. This is the 6-story building, and future multifamily as well. And then in terms of development permits that were issued in 2023, again, these are ones that will be moving towards through their building permit process or construction. 1840 Stewart Avenue, that one is well underway. This is renovation to 3 existing buildings, which used to be the Sealand Market. It's a very exciting project. It's in the Breckenhill Hill neighborhood, very close to the ferry terminal. So it's a very prominent site, providing new commercial space as well as enhanced outdoor space and connection for the public to the waterfront walkway. 325 Watfield, again, another example, highlighting multifamily, as I mentioned, near the University District at 525 3rd Street. And 200 Hanson Street, this is in the central Nanaimo, close to Cordaway School. It's the second phase of a multifamily development. First phase had a number of townhouse units, 49 townhouse units, and this gave an opportunity to provide another building form on the same site and in a key location near transit and schools, as well as other services. So this is an 84-unit development. And it's not all housing. There is some commercial and other industrial development applications that we do review. 2595 Bowen Road is a standalone commercial building for auto sales and service. And as everyone I'm sure has seen, we've seen a renewal of a number of auto dealerships in that area, including Mitsubishi, Toyota, a number of other dealerships as well. And other development permits that were significant to note, 1588 Boundary Crescent, this is in the hospital area. So again, another really exciting opportunity where we've seen a mixed-use project for 12 multifamily units and a restaurant. And it's part of a larger redevelopment project on that site, and really the intention being to complement the hospital area as a campus in that part of the community. So providing much needed services not only to residents but also to staff. So this is a complementary development at 1588 Boundary. 6201 Oliver is a 35-unit, 6-story multifamily building. This is in the Longwood area. And again, opportunity to provide housing near North Nanaimo Town Center. And then the project on Howard and 4th is, that's closer to our University District Harewood neighborhood. And again, providing a much needed form of housing, family-oriented housing. And council may recall this rezoning when it came forward committed to providing a number of 3- and 4-bedroom units within the development. So pleased to see that in close proximity to schools and services. And then also lastly to highlight the 13 Halliburton 5-story 44-unit apartment building, again in the south end, providing a number of amenities as many of these other ones have to achieve additional density. In this case in particular, they provided a designated moto car share space as well as other on-site amenities. So some very complementary developments in south of downtown. Thanks, and now I'll turn it over to my colleague, Ms. Brinkman.
Thank you very much. Ms. Brinkman.
Thank you, Ms. Rowett. Thank you. So in the next few slides, I will summarize ways in which the city supported affordable housing in 2023. So the 2023 Housing Needs Report found that an average of 1,155 housing units are needed annually to accommodate growth in Nanaimo, and we are on track. 1,170 housing units were issued building permit in 2023, and the need was also met in 2022 when 1,370 housing units were issued building permits. The Housing Needs Report also identified that an average of 525 non-market housing units are needed annually for households earning less than $40,000 per year. So in 2023, 121 non-market units were issued an occupancy permit and 40 non-market units were issued building permits. Achieving 525 non-market units annually is a challenge requiring resources from the province and the federal government, but the city will continue to find ways to support non-market housing. Staff have been working towards building an understanding of the total number of non-market housing units that currently exist in the city. And so what we have found was that 1,452 social housing units do exist, and there may be more. These are just the ones we, identified so far. So social housing is permanent housing that is subsidized and is lower than the average cost of private market housing. Also, we found that there are 338 supportive housing units in the city. So supportive housing is permanent housing that has on-site supports for people to transition out of homelessness. And we also found that there are 259 temporary housing beds. So these are beds offering emergency and support services for people who are homeless or at risk of becoming homeless, 1 night or longer. And these include transition houses and recovery centers. So one key way the city supports more non-market housing in the city is through our partnership with BC Housing. And so in 2020, the city signed a memorandum of understanding with BC Housing for 6 sites in the city. And so this slide outlines the progress of that memorandum of understanding. So at 702 Nicholl Street, that project is completed in March 2022, 51 supportive housing units on that site. In April, So this month, the supportive housing development at 285 Prideaux Street was issued occupancy, so that's exciting. That one is complete with 51 units. Also, at 250 Terminal Avenue, the city received a rezoning application in June 2023, and council can expect to see that rezoning application hopefully in May of this year, and that would provide 50 supportive housing units and 37 affordable housing units is the goal for that site. At 355 Nickel Street, the rezoning application is complete and a development permit application received in December 2023, and the hope is that construction could begin by early 2025 for 36 supportive housing units. Also at 1425 Cranberry Avenue, 46 housing units are proposed, and we do expect to see a rezoning or development application in 2024. A lot of work has been going on in the background to get that site ready for the rezoning or development permit stage. And then finally, the Tutuxton project, the partnership between the school district, BC Housing, and the city for approximately 390 housing units. And so that rezoning application is already at third reading. We expect the development permit application soon, and really the goal for that is construction by March 2025. So I did want to point out that BC Housing also supports other developments in the city, not just in partnership with the city, but with other nonprofits in the city. And you can see those. There's a link here on this slide. It shows there's a map on the BC Housing website to show all the other projects in the city that BC Housing is investing in. So this next slide is about the Rent Bank program. It's an eviction prevention and housing stability service that provides interest-free loans to low to moderate income renter households facing eviction or in need of assistance because of a short-term financial crisis. So the John Howard Society, now Connective, and the city began providing rent bank loans in January 2021 through the Provincial Rent Bank program. So in 2023, 82 approximately rent bank loans were issued, which supported over 185 people benefited from that. This service is important because 24% of renter households are in core housing need and paying more than 30% of their income on housing costs. And renters with core housing need are more susceptible to housing loss. And the city expanded support to the Rent Bank and Rent Supplement program in 2023. And so we hope to have more numbers for you regarding this Rent Supplement program next year as that rolls out. So other ways the city supports housing is through the city's revitalization tax exemption bylaw. So that encourages multifamily units in the downtown area by offering a tax exemption on the municipal portion for a 10-year term. So in 2023, 3 developments were issued those tax exemptions, which provide an incentive for 514 dwelling units in the downtown. And staff are working on a revision to this program as directed by council, and you may see that in the coming months. And also, the development cost charge bylaw contains a provision allowing for a 50% reduction of development cost charge fees for not-for-profit rental housing when at least 30% of the units are secured with a housing agreement, such that rent does not exceed 30% of before-tax income. So in 2023, one development was issued this DCC reduction, allowing for incentivizing 40 new non-market housing units in the city. So council has provided direction to staff regarding housing initiatives and housing matters in the Integrated Action Plan. And so this next 2 slides is an update of where we're at, what we achieved in 2023 regarding some of those actions. So the Increasing Housing Options Project and related new provincial housing bills requirements will together expand secondary suites and encourage infill housing. So that was a priority action from council. You'll be seeing that probably May 6th, more information about that in those 2 initiatives. The Increasing Housing Options Project also addressed family-friendly housing and accessible housing needs, so that was priority action 72 and 80 in the Integrated Action Plan, and so more will come with regards to those 2 programs. And the city works with BC Housing Weekly to advance commitments and development investments for non-market housing, including supportive units, shelters, complex care, navigation center, and social housing. So not just on the existing memorandum of understanding, but working towards new sites and a new memorandum of understanding as well. Also in 2023, provincial funding was secured to support the Woodgrove Area Plan project, which will encourage residential development in proximity to transit and services. And as I mentioned, the rent bank and rent supplement programs were both reviewed and provided additional funds in 2023. And to increase the long-term rental housing stock, a review of the short-term rental program was completed, and enforcement tools will be improved in 2024. And also, as noted, progress was made toward building a database of the non-market housing units in the city so that we can better understand what we have and how we can support those units. The city continues to find ways to support more housing and more housing affordability. Currently, staff are focusing on implementing the provincial housing legislation related to small-scale multi-unit housing in the transit-oriented areas. And so if you concludes my presentation, if you have any questions for us, please let us know. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Councillor Gesselbrock.
Thank you, Mayor, through you. Thank you very much for the report. Just looking at the slide on the housing needs report. So basically for housing units needed average, like on average, we're meeting our goal, like what's needed. But for non-market housing, we're not even meeting like 50% of our goal. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yeah.
Okay, great. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I was just looking at that, and that's sort of the one number that did jump out to me, and I appreciated just in the report and the presentation sort of the thorough overview of the non-market housing. That's great to see that included, and I guess that's an area that we definitely have our work cut out for us, so thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Prino.
Thank you, Worship. And actually, Councillor Gesselbrock asked the question that I was going to ask, but I'm just wondering if the new housing that we're going to be receiving funding and working with BC Housing, will that bring us up to what we need to do on a yearly basis?
Through the chair to Councillor Perino. I do estimate we approximately, you know that this year, or in 2023, there was 40, an occupancy permit issued for 40 housing units. But there are some years where we do a little bit more. So it is an average. And it's true, yes, our partnership with BC Housing will certainly increase those numbers. Yeah,
thank goodness. Okay, thank you so much. Great presentation, by the way. And actually, there was a booklet that came with it. Right on the. I'll come back to you. There was quite a large booklet that came on the housing. Mind you, that may have been the other presentation, so I'll come back to it. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Holm, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. I was just going to maybe just follow up briefly to Councillor Perino's question, and great question. And just we'll be monitoring. I think things are changing with the provincial and federal announcements with respect to housing funding.
Yes.
The BC Builds program, for instance. I mean, we haven't any identified projects in the city at this point, but we can anticipate that there probably will be. As well, there were some significant federal funding announcements. So the province and the federal government, the provincial and federal government, they both made recent announcements to support non-market housing projects and rental housing projects. So I think we'll see, hopefully, those programs. I'm not sure. It's much too early to say whether or not we'll see us hitting targets there, but they're definitely going to help us move in the right direction. Yes. And there's more work that we can do. There are more tools that the province has announced recently that we're still going to be working through, understanding how we're going to work those into sort of the toolbox that the city has to help encourage non-market housing and
Good.
Support that. Thank you.
Good, thank you. And Your Worship, I was actually thinking of the state of the Nanaimo economy, and that booklet was excellent and talked a lot about housing as well. So some good things coming in our future. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Manley, and then Councillor Hemmings.
Thank you, Your Worship. Great presentation. Thank you for that. I'm curious about the housing needs report. the 1,155 units, does the 525 non-market fit into that 1,100? So that's a portion of the 1,100, or is that in addition to?
It's a portion of the 1,100. So 46% of the housing units that we need should be non-market units.
Right.
Is what that is saying, yeah.
So the rental subsidies that we're getting provincially and that we're providing municipally will actually help with some of that non-market to get people housed, but we are meeting the target in terms of the number of units overall.
It's a great point that the rent supplement and rent bank program definitely do support towards that goal.
The other question I had is just about social housing and supportive housing. We have a number of group homes in the community, Vancouver Island Mental Health, Nanaimo Association for Community Living, a lot of other different organizations. Do those fall under supportive housing, or is that social housing? Because there's kind of a mix of supports in some of those group homes where people do need a lot of support, but when you mentioned supportive housing, you were saying that was to bring people out of homelessness and work them through the process into getting them into their own homes.
Through the chair, I know it's not temporary housing, but whether it falls under the social housing category, supportive housing category, I'm not 100% sure, so my apology.
It's in the count there somewhere, though.
Yes.
Okay. And I guess the new units that were built for seniors living, those are all social housing units. And what would come under long-term care or supportive housing for seniors would be kind of a different category. Is that correct?
If they're subsidized, it would fall under the social housing category.
Okay. Whether it doesn't matter which group or what level of support they need.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Himmons.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you to staff for the presentation. It feels like building is booming in the city, and I think this reinforces that. So thank you. Exciting to see. My question is related to the second to last slide where we note that progress is being made towards building a database of non-market housing units. Can I just hear a bit more about that database and what our intention is and who's going to use it? Yeah, I'd just like to know a bit more.
Through the chair to Councillor Hemmons. So it is an action that it's an action in the integrated action plan that we had wanted to understand. But last year, there was a direction from council to look at permissive tax exemptions for non-market housing. And so that actually really kind of accelerated staff trying to build that database, because in order to understand permissive tax, the potential implications of permissive tax exemptions, we needed to understand what existed in the city. So that actually was one impetus for working on that at the end of last year and early this year. But certainly, it's a very valuable tool for understanding how, what exists in the city and what we need to work towards as well.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Thorpe.
Thank you very much, Your Worship, and if I may, thanks, ladies, both of you. I did have a question related to one of Ms. Rowett's slides, and that was on new subdivisions, and you don't need to go back to it, but I was curious, under park dedication, the fact that last year we added 0.7 hectares, and that's down significantly from 2 years ago when it was 2.57 hectares. On the other hand, the amount of cash in lieu received has gone up substantially. So we're talking here, if I'm correct, about small neighborhood playground type parks. And the city's philosophy, I believe, has always been that there should be some type of neighborhood park within a 5-minute walk of subdivisions. So would I be correct in assuming that we're dedicating less parkland because these subdivisions are in areas that already have green space and parkland? Or is there another reason for this?
Thank you for the question, and through the chair. Certainly there may be some subdivisions where park dedication is not triggered. If it is less than 3 new lots created, park dedication would not be required, or potentially in cases where park provision is a requirement or cash in lieu, it may be that there is substantial park in the area, and so cash in lieu would be accepted by the approving officer as a result.
All right, thank you. I just think it's important to remember as we develop and we densify and we experience such growth in our city that green spaces are important to communities as well, and I hope council always keeps that in mind. Thank you.
I'm not seeing anyone else. Thank you very much for that presentation. I suspect the public enjoyed it as much as we did. The next item, committee minutes, we don't have any. Ask for a motion for item 10 for adoption of the consent items. Moved Councillor Armstrong, seconded Councillor Hemmons. Anything that anyone wishes pulled? If not, all those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. Thank you. We have separately addressed consent items. That's the Public Safety Committee meeting, April 10th, 2024. Councillor Hemmons.
Thank you, Worship. I'm going to recuse myself. I have a child who goes to the elementary school that's being discussed.
Thank you very much. Yeah. Councillor Gesselbrock.
I'm going to recuse myself as well. I'm in the direct neighborhood. Thanks.
Thank you very much. The issue is around improving pedestrian safety in the south end of Nanaimo. We have 3 delegations. I note we have 3 delegations under items unrelated to agenda items tonight, so forgive me if I warn all of you, I'm going to be stiff tonight in terms of time. You each have 5 minutes. When you get to the 4 minutes, I will tell you you've got a minute left and hope you will and trust you'll finish on time. The first delegation is Echo McNaughton. Ms. McNaughton, if you could just introduce yourself for the record when you get to the mic. Point it towards your mouth, please. And if it's the right height, great. If you were Mr. Sims, I'd ask you to raise the podium, but you're not Mr. Sims. And you'll have 5 minutes, and as I say, I'll let you know when there's 1 minute left.
All right. Hi, I'm Echo McNaughton. I live in the South End, and yeah. So this is where we call home. Our close-knit neighborhood has the kind of community spirit people dream of. It's a place where people show up for one another. We're an old neighborhood, and you see it in our infrastructure. Homes here are affordable by Nanaimo standards. Many young families are moving here, and we are growing. Advocacy is hard because people are busy just trying to put food on the table. We are rich in community, but not in wealth. Nickel is part of the Trans-Canada Highway. Many families live a few short blocks from the school, but don't walk because the crossing is unsafe. Last winter, the crossing guard at the intersection was hit by a car, and both of her legs were broken. She told me she had many close calls before this incident. This crossing needs to be made safer so this doesn't happen again, and never to a child. Many neighbors have reported almost being in an accident in this intersection, which is a 5-way stop. The eastbound stop on Needham is difficult to see when traveling southbound on Victoria. Living close to this intersection, I see and have been in many near misses. We'd like to see View Street closed off once Victoria Road is repaired, in line with the South End neighborhood plans approved by the city. This would allow the crosswalk and stop sign on Needham to be moved up for better visibility. There are no sidewalks on the west side of Bayview. Students traveling along this side must walk on the shoulder of the road to get around parked cars. There are regular close calls between students and vehicles. The students of Bayview wrote letters to the city, but I wasn't able to share them with you tonight. They know getting to school should be safer. The neighbors in this community have been asking for sidewalks, usually for as long as they have lived in the area. We have the emails to back it up. Over and over again, when talking about the problems we experience in regard to pedestrian and road safety, we get 2 responses from the city. One is that they've done a study and they tell us it's not actually a problem. The speeding isn't that bad. There aren't that many accidents. What this misses is the element not captured in the study, how unsafe it feels to walk anywhere. There's no sidewalk in many places, so while the speeding may not meet their threshold for action, try walking next to a car going that speed where there's no safe place to go. The second thing we have heard is that the best way to get improvements is to pair it with utility upgrades, as this makes financial sense. Many doing this advocacy have heard this and tried to put their trust in the process and be patient. The school has spoken with the city about the coming planned upgrades on Bing Key, Columbia, Princess Avenue, and Needham Street. When they brought up the need for sidewalks and better crossings for student safety, a member of city staff dismissed the needs of the school with something along the lines of, "Yeah, everyone wants that. It's not going to happen." Our concern is if sidewalks do not happen with the May upgrades, that it may be decades before there is significant work happening here again in which these add-ons can be paired. I can't imagine the city would tear up a perfectly good road to put a sidewalk in a few years from now. A no now sounds like a no ever. In 2010, the city adopted the South End Neighborhood Plan. Taxpayers funded this plan over 14 years ago. Many of the changes we are suggesting are outlined in this plan, which is approved by council. We would like to see it implemented as soon as possible. Otherwise, the taxpayer money spent on this plan was a waste.
1 minute.
Our neighborhood is one of the oldest in Nanaimo. People have been paying taxes in the city longer than in many other areas, but what do we have to show for it? People from the South End regularly point out the discrepancy between our infrastructure and that in the North End. Every single person I have spoken to about these issues is beyond frustrated. People feel ignored, their concerns are not worth the city's attention, and that our neighborhood is not a priority. This is unacceptable. We would like a motion that council allocate funds for sidewalks to be included with planned upgrades scheduled for May around Bayview School. Sidewalks in our neighborhood with any planned future projects. Solutions that encourage drivers to slow down and see pedestrians. For the city and SECA to work together to set up a meeting with MODI. And quarterly communications between the city and SECA about progress on these initiatives.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Your
Thank you.
timing is almost perfect. Any questions for the delegation?
I do have one.
Councillor Prino, please.
Thank you, Your Worship, and a question through you to Ms. McNaughton. I just want to say, first of all, you're an excellent advocate. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Two questions for you. I'm just wondering if you could just show me again the spot that the area that you would like to see concentrated on to begin with.
It's about the third slide, I believe.
Yeah,
We have a
it
map
just went
overview.
by fast, and I
Yes,
just
it
thought-
did. Yeah, it's essentially Needham Street that comes over Nickel,
Yep,
goes over Victoria, and up past the school.
okay.
And then Princess Street that intersects with it, and then the three major intersections along there.
Okay.
Yeah, there we go. Thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted that clarified. And my second question is, have you talked to the school board?
Yes, some members in the community who've been helping me with the advocacy work have reached out to them, and they are supportive. The principal, the PAC are all super supportive. They helped us write letters, which I'm sure you guys received.
Yes.
And the students did have like a big box of letters. I just wasn't allowed to take them for privacy concerns. But
No, that's okay. I was more concerned about the school board because they're often the ones that we work with. So,
Yeah.
it's waiting to hear from them. So
Definitely.
excellent job. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. I'm not seeing any other questions.
okay, thank you.
The next delegation is Sydney Robertson. Ms. Robertson, good evening. You've heard the drill, 5 minutes. When you're 4 minutes in, I'll let you know. If you could introduce yourself for the record, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Sydney Robertson, and on behalf of the South End Community Association, I want to thank you for taking the time tonight to talk through our concerns. I'm sure you're aware that this project, the utility upgrades happening around Bayview, have garnered a big response from our community. One reason is that the pedestrian infrastructure really matters to us in the South End. It comes up constantly at SECA meetings and has done for years. Beyond the Princess Street area, we've got two infamous, I'll call them five-way intersections, one at Victoria and Needham and another at Esplanade, Irwin, Crace, and the trestle that now takes people to the Hello Ferry. And then there's Nickel Street. I don't even think I need to say more about Nickel Street, you know what I mean. I know that many of my neighbors rely on walking routes not just for recreation, but as their primary or only mode of transportation. Safe walking routes, as well as accessible routes for scooters and wheelchairs, are as important to them as roads are to any of us drivers, and an increase to the pedestrian funding would reflect that. The second big factor in our interest is process. We were expecting a consultation step in the process, so we were taken by surprise to learn that utility work was starting really soon and that no sidewalks were included in the plan. We understand if quarterly reports with SECA aren't feasible, but we'd just like to build some better communications. We're also needing more information. We're hearing that the cost of building sidewalks is astronomical, and it might help the community if we could see a breakdown of that. And we'd also like some discussion of what we're kind of seeing as a kind of a gold standard sidewalk scape, and wondering whether there's a silver standard that might serve us better, or even a colorful standard that would go over really well. We want to do our part better, and we think the city does too. We want to note that we're very open to creative solutions. We're very happy to break out some cans of paint and some rollers. And in fact, some solutions like that are included in the neighborhood plan that was adopted by council. One last point for me, that the South End community, as you know, is carrying a hefty share of the city's burden. There's a downward pressure that comes from that. And we need community amenities to lift the morale of the community. We're grateful for everything the city has done for the South End lately, but we do still need more support. And I'm hopeful that we have an opportunity here to do something a bit better. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you very much. Councillor Manley.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you for the presentation, and thank you to Ms. McNaughton for the presentation. The one slide that in the previous presentation, there was a five-way, and you just talked about that as well. There was a reference to closing off View Street, which is part of that five-way. So how do residents on that street feel about closing the street off and making that intersection safer? Have you talked to them in the neighborhood?
I know that that vision of closing View Street, maybe turning it into a garden space or some much needed park space, was part of the neighborhood plan visioning process, and that's included in the neighborhood plan to do that to View Street. I'm not sure what kind of targeted consultation was done for people who live there. I think that there are people who use the alley that's accessed from it as their main means of driving to and from their homes. But I personally still think that there's an opportunity there to do maybe a one-lane thing with some green space beside it, or something that would still calm that intersection. The big problem with that intersection is that the stop sign on the west side of Needham is far away from all the other stop signs at the intersection. So people are really not even aware that there's another car involved when they're at the intersection. So the near misses happen when someone going along Victoria suddenly has someone from Needham appearing in front of them. Closing that road would allow the stop sign on Needham, that's a problem, to move forward and be in the zone. But if closing that diagonal road isn't feasible, the other thing we envisioned in the neighborhood plan is painting that entire intersection. And it's been shown in Portland and other places that adding color and community, life to this space just alerts drivers. You need to stop, think a little bit differently, look around. You're in a neighborhood here.
And in the community plan, I think one of the slides was from the community plan. Was it envisioned to have a roundabout there in that intersection?
I think that there isn't quite enough space for a roundabout, even though it looks like a large intersection to us, but it's a trucking route. Okay. And I think a built-up roundabout would be a problem, but trucks can drive straight over painted pavement, so.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Armstrong.
Yeah, I was just wondering if some of the large trucks are an issue, or is a lot of time, like we see in other school zones, actually parents in a rush to drop their kids and then a rush to leave?
I don't live close to there. I don't know specifically. It wouldn't surprise me, but
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm not seeing any further questions. Appreciate the presentation.
thank you.
And the next presenters together are Alec McKenzie, and I assume it's Grace White, or is it Gracie? Grace. Please come on down. If you could introduce yourself, 5 minutes, and at the 4th minute, I'll let you know you have a minute left. Thank you.
Thank you. I was supposed to present with my partner, and our son was here, but they went home to put him to bed. Further making the point that advocating for ourselves is hard to do. My name is Grace White, and I've been living on Princess Street for the past 6 years as a renter with my partner and now my son. We actually just bought our first home on Princess Street, and we intend to stay there and grow our family there. We are active members of SEED, the South End Eco Development, and we have put a lot of our time, energy, our talents into fortifying and beautifying our community along with the other members of SEED. We have 2 food forests on Columbia and Bing Key. We have our Bayview community gardens and the garden boxes. We plant edible and native plants, and we build the soil and the community for our children and for the other members of our community. We do a lot on our own. Any given day, you'll see us pushing wheelbarrows, bringing shovels, dropping wood chips off at shared spaces. We do our best to make it a safe community. We all know each other. My family knows all the other families. We all see each other out. But we can only do so much without the support from the city to make it safe and livable. The upgrades coming in summer 2024 allow us a great opportunity to make this area walkable and livable for our children, for our families, and for future generations, especially the students at Bayview Elementary. An increase of signage in the area and sidewalks will allow our students to walk to school safely. On my block of Princess alone, so between Needham Street and 5th, we did a little head count. Just in that block alone, there are 12 children, either school-aged or younger, who are walking to school, walking with their families, stroller walks, heading to the park. Just like you said, green space is so important. This area is only densifying. People are making basement suites. People are having laneway houses being built. It's just going to increase, and having no sidewalks is completely abhorrent. Residents are purchasing their own children at play signs, but we need the city to put infrastructure in place to make drivers slow down and realize where they are. I will say there are truck drivers that do come through that area quite often from the highway, and they are not given, and all drivers are not given adequate signage that they are entering a school area and a residential zone. Residents are forced to park on the shoulder of Princess Street, so if you're walking on Princess Street, you are walking on the road, and you are dodging cars. It's a main thoroughfare to Harewood, to the Vancouver Island University, and to the University Village. Other areas of Nanaimo often have access to green space and safe sidewalks to get there. One example would be Lindley Valley. If you're a homeowner there, if you have a house there, you might have a trail that leads to a city sidewalk with raised crosswalks, increased signage, and car infrastructure like roundabouts that make it safe and accessible to walk. But our students at Bayview, who might have access to Cat Stream and Robbins Park and our beautiful community gardens and boxes, lack sidewalks and posted speed limits and adequate signage to make sure drivers know that they are in a school zone and a very residential community. Sidewalks benefit mental, social, and physical well-being. They benefit school accessibility, after-school and weekend activities, school-based outdoor education, wheelchair accessibility, and community building. We hope that the upgrades happening in 2024 allow us to make this community safe, and that so one day my son Harvey can walk to school on a sidewalk. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Councillor Armstrong?
Well, actually, I just wanted to make a clarifying comment and then have a question for staff, so I will wait if there's no other speakers.
All right. No other delegations on this item. Thank you very much. Not seeing any other questions.
So
Councillor Armstrong?
there's been a lot said about the fact, like Lindley Valley, et cetera, they've got new sidewalks, but I don't think what people are aware of is that the developers put those in as part of our new things. It was not city dollars used to put in those sidewalks. So I think people need to be aware of that. And secondly, for those that couldn't go to the Public Safety Committee meeting, I was just going to ask Mr. Sims to clarify about the issue with the sidewalks for that area that you discussed at the Public Safety meeting, please.
Thanks, Your Worship. Good evening, Council. Thanks, Councillor Armstrong. To your point, I think one of the challenges Council faces is the balancing the many pressures on not only its finances, but the push and pull of particularly pedestrian infrastructure is quite a hot topic. It's a challenge that is difficult to balance. Typically, I'm going to speak generally, I think, but typically sidewalks, pedestrian infrastructure tends to follow some of those primary and secondary routes focused around some of the city's urban centers, like the downtown or the VIU areas, for example. And we also really do try to have pedestrian safety enhancements wherever we can around schools. But there's better than 12.5 schools in town that could use and deserve some of this work. In fact, I would say Bayview, many years ago now, a decade and a half or so ago, received an active school travel plan and was in concert with the school district, which created a sidewalk in front of the school. And a lot of the discussions we've had in the past have been around traffic safety, of course, which resulted in the one-way on the street right in front of the school. It's slipping my mind at the moment. So that was all sort of as part of that. I would say that the current infrastructure plan is looking at the possibility of expanding the pavement because that option exists. Whether it's viable, there's a relatively low volume road for traffic, and that's just, I'm speaking of Princess Street now at this moment. Typically building sidewalks, we've seen a ridiculous escalation in cost, and usually when there's storm drains and catch basins required, it gets even higher, but we're in the $2,000 to $3,000 per linear meter cost. Again, that's this sort of pressure and trying to balance that with other priorities around the city.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Perino, and then Councillor Eastbeard.
Oh, thank you, Your Worship. And a question through you again to Mr. Sims. You said $2,000 a linear meter. Is that correct? Is it for
plus?
I'm sorry.
Plus. Plus.
$2,000
yes. $2,000 to $3,000.
Yeah, I thought so. Yeah. I also I thought Ms. Robertson talked about some of the innovative work that's being done in some other cities as far as painting areas and things like that. And have we considered any of those kinds of things, or have we been in discussion at all with the school board regarding some of those options?
Your Worship, our transportation staff, school board staff, ICBC, and the RCMP meet on a fairly regular basis and it's really around traffic safety. It may not necessarily be specific to each school, but this area has come up and has been the subject of quite a number of discussions. Certainly it's been around speed and the number of vehicles, the confusion at the five-way stop, which we acknowledge. I think we've added a flashing light on one of the stop signs to try and draw attention to it. And certainly the Nickel Street at Needham is concerning and challenging, and the speed along Nickel is really difficult to deal with.
It is.
But we've been sort of pressuring the Ministry of Transportation on that one, and they've been as responsive as they can be, let me say it that way, to try and help the pedestrian crossing side of things. So those discussions have been really around traffic safety, not so much specifically around pedestrians adjacent to the school.
Okay. And a final question, Ms. Mercer's here, and I thought she'll remember this. How much money do we put away each year for pedestrian walkways? I was going to say sidewalks, but pedestrian walkways.
Through your worship to Councillor Perino, the base is 300 per year, and for a few years it was bumped up to $1 million, but the base is 300 per year.
Okay.
Your worship, if I'm sorry.
Sorry.
300,000.
Okay, good, thank you.
Your worship, if I may, one of the things that Ms. Mercer is referring to is the pedestrian unallocated line item in our capital budget.
Right.
And so that $300,000 is an annual amount. In the last several years, council's bumped that up to $1 million.
Yes.
I think in this year we're taking a break just because of the volume of projects
That's
as
right.
a whole.
Yeah.
But if council wish to consider some items around, the expansion of asphalt around on Princess Street, as an example, that's maybe a good discussion to have in the context of that pedestrian unallocated. We hope to bring that back to council in May at GPC.
Well, the advocacy work here is to be praised. It's been a good presentations by all three of the speakers. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Eastmere, then Councillor Manley.
Thank you. I have a couple questions and then a possibly follow-up motion on this.
Councillor Forpas one first.
Gotcha. Okay. So my question has to do with, first off, the logistics and feasibility of meeting with Modi on this. Because there's an ask for us to facilitate a meeting with Modi. How easy is that to do, and to be able to bring the Sika Neighborhood Association in on that?
That's a good question, Your Worship. I think we can certainly try. We've knocked on their door a number of times on this particular issue, and they have a mandate that may not line up with ours, if I can say it that way. But we'll certainly push to see if we can arrange a meeting alongside the Neighborhood Association, because that may help the cause for sure.
Do we need a council motion to support that, or will that just kind of happen? Okay, thank you. And then around the South End Neighborhood Plan that was adopted in 2010, there's a short-term item in the implementation strategy to update the city's manual of engineering standards and specifications for street construction in the neighborhood to reflect street design concepts that are contained in that neighborhood plan. Did that get done?
Your Worship, that neighborhood plan was done quite a while ago, as you know, and the updates to the engineering standards have probably overtaken the desired standard of the day. We now have this the concept of complete streets, and those are typically for new subdivision developments or when we're reconstructing a road in its complete form.
Okay, and then just because I recognize this plan is from 2010, so it kind of seems old, but when you look at the items in the implementation strategy, I think it is interesting to revisit them and see sort of where we got with it, because another medium-term item was evaluating the feasibility of a cul-de-sac on View Street between Rainier and South Streets, or limiting traffic movement at the intersection of View and South Streets. Does that sound relevant still?
It certainly does, Your Worship. I think that has been looked at. Now, I don't know what the outcome and why it hasn't been implemented. It may be purely just a funding issue, but I'm confident that that's been looked at some point, but it's certainly worth revisiting.
Okay, and there was a second part of it, which was evaluating the feasibility of closing a section of Old Victoria Road intersecting with Needham Street to vehicle traffic to create a linear park, or into a one-way heading northeast in front of Bayview. So I think that's the thing that you said did happen as a result. The turning of it into a one-way. So I'm just wondering if there's another motion that comes forward if some of these pieces can be re-examined when we potentially have that discussion around the pedestrian unallocated fund, and I'll defer to Councillor Manley.
Thank you. We'll go to Councillor Manley and then Councillor Thorpe.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, I just had a few questions for staff as well, just about there was a reference to the gold standard and the silver standard for sidewalks. I know some areas of our city have asphalt sidewalks, and you know, I'm wondering about the feasibility of having asphalt sidewalks and prefab concrete barriers for safety, as opposed to having full concrete curbs and concrete sidewalks, just to create more safety for pedestrians in a way that's more cost effective. Is there a possibility of doing those kind of things? Or?
I think there was a time that was done, and it was a cheap and cheerful method of getting some sidewalks, and in fact you'll still see some of them in place today. What we have found is it's a bit of a short-term economy where as time goes on, they deteriorate or get destroyed and end up actually creating more problems than they're solving. And maybe I'm sort of generalizing things, but it's a good question, and I think the cheap and cheerful solution now would be widening the road and creating a pedestrian zone perhaps with the delineators that you've seen on some streets in the area.
Okay. And yeah, and then I had questions also about View Street and blocking that off and making that intersection using some other kind of techniques in terms of getting people to slow down in that intersection. I know Nickel Street we have to deal with the Ministry of Transportation for sure, but I think anything that we can do to increase pedestrian safety is important in this area. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Thorpe.
Yeah, thank you very much, Your Worship. First of all, I appreciate all the delegations on this evening, and especially the work of Ms. Robertson and the South End Community Association, who are always very reasoned and do their homework. And certainly pedestrian safety, especially in school zones, is naturally important to me, as it is to all of council. But I am a little bit leery, Your Worship, this evening of setting some kind of precedent where we're responding to one neighborhood only with their concerns, when we know very well that there are other neighborhoods that also have similar concerns about pedestrian safety in their locations. We hear regularly from the North End. So it's very hard to weigh the needs of one area against the other, and I don't think it would be fair to immediately respond to a request from one area without putting everything in perspective with information from staff. So my personal feeling on this is that we need to discuss this further. We need to get more information. Councillor Manley has made, and others have made suggestions of several possible innovative ideas. I would prefer, Your Worship, that we defer further discussion on this topic until we can receive from staff some more information on, first of all, details about our unallocated pedestrian safety funding and possible, as I said, innovative ideas that might help solve this problem and others. So I'm prepared to make that a motion if it's required, but I'll turn to you for that.
Please.
So I will make that motion then to defer further discussion on this until we can receive staff information regarding our unallocated pedestrian funding and potential traffic or safety improvement innovations.
Is there a seconder? Seconder, Councillor Armstrong. If I may weigh on this, Councillor Thorpe, and it goes back to something Ms. McNaughton said in her presentation around the school board. We received one letter today from a school trustee, and I understand the principal has issued a letter, but to my knowledge, Mr. Sims, and correct me if I'm wrong, there has been no formal request from the school board itself, whether by way of vote or memorandum from their superintendent, asking us to make this particular school and safety in the area a priority over others. Is that fair comment?
That's correct, Your Worship.
Then I think there's no question that Councillor Thorpe's motion is the appropriate one. I appreciate the advocacy of everyone who's come here tonight, but I think that is the proper thing to do. it's important that council respond with the information that we get. It's not just around advocacy. Councillor Brown.
Thanks, Your Worship. Through you to staff, just a quick question. I'm just curious on the timing of this project and the, is it proceeding, basically on a timeline that wouldn't allow any reconsideration with the unallocated pedestrian fund? And my second question is, we've run into this situation a couple times now where we're doing some sort of work on the road, but we're actually not really raising the standard to maybe what our ambitions are. And I'm just curious, what is the criteria? What is the evaluation or analysis that occurs when there's a project to say, okay, hey, this doesn't meet the threshold to do a higher standard? Who's making that call, and where did that policy come from? Thank you.
Worship, when it comes to funding, especially pedestrian infrastructure, that's a general revenue funded, sort of general taxation. We're at the point of triaging critical infrastructure projects as far as storm drain, which is also funded from general revenue. This is the additional work to add pedestrian infrastructure, increase the standard on small local roads, is triaged to a lower priority than on a major road or on one of our primary infrastructure. So it's purely the funding that is driving the infrastructure projects that we're delivering. I was in a meeting today with staff, again, and the triaging is more what we're doing nowadays than prioritizing. I was triaging some of our storm drain projects across the city, and that's, we're under a squeeze as far as general revenue. So I'm only just bringing that up to say that when we do these projects, in an ideal world, yes, we would add the pedestrian infrastructure for a slight stretch of funding, but even that slight stretch of funding won't go to cover it.
Sorry, Your Worship. Second question there was, we wait for the discussion around pedestrian allocation funding to have a discussion on this and other places. Have we missed the boat in talking about this one, potential upgrades?
Sorry, Your Worship, I missed that second question. In this case, the work is happening over the course of the summer. It'll be quite a bit of, to get out of the way of the school as much as possible. So there's some time yet ahead to add some scope to that project.
Just to confirm, Mr. Sims, in terms of a deferral, the general talk is coming back to us in May, I believe. Is that correct?
Thanks, Your Worship. Yes, that's correct.
Thank you. I'm hoping it may reduce some of the questions and comments because I'm noting the hours we roll along here. Councillor Eastmere, please.
I'm just wondering if, like, a motion to defer, it doesn't include for me the piece that I would be hoping staff could bring to that discussion around options for safer pedestrian infrastructure that could be added as part of it. I don't want to come into that conversation at the same point we're at now with no clear sense of what our options are, because it is clear that sidewalks aren't an option, because I think you mentioned that there's not storm drains in that area, which are needed infrastructure piece to have sidewalks.
Worship, there will be new storm drains installed as part of this project, but that'll be challenging and expensive to add sidewalks and the additional drainage extensions for this particular stretch of road, compared to the value of the infrastructure that would result.
Okay, challenging and expensive is literally everything we do. So I appreciate that, but it's yeah. Okay, so for me, like, I'm not in favor of an option to defer because I would prefer that we put into words the things that we're looking for staff to bring to that meeting. And so for me, I would be looking for the options to support safe pedestrian initiatives in and around the Bayview School neighborhood.
Right, the motion is on the floor, but we've got two more speakers, Councillor Armstrong, then Councillor Perino.
Thank you. I will be supporting the motion because I know staff is going to be bringing those options forward. I know one that Mr. Sims spoke about for those that weren't at the public safety meeting was widening of the road and possibly putting bollards in, which would make it safer, or the big cement curbing. So I think our staff is good enough to know that they will look at different options for us and bring them forward as to what can be done and what the cost will be. And I would be interested in knowing what the cost would be to put in proper sidewalks as well. I know it's going to be expensive, but at the end of the day, it's still this council's decision to make where dollars are spent. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Gurry, you were indicating you wish to say something?
Yes, I just wanted to clarify with Councillor Thorpe his actual motion, because I believe it does capture some of what Councillor Eastmere is talking about. I have defer further discussion to future meeting in order to receive information from staff regarding unallocated pedestrian funding and options to consider pedestrian safety upgrades. And then I put near Bayview School, because that's what I believe Councillor Thorpe was
Thank you. That is the motion. Councillor Perino, wish to say something?
Yes, I do. Thank you, Your Worship. I will be supporting this motion as well. And the biggest reason for me is the advocacy presentations that we received tonight are excellent, but we need to be working with the school board, and they need to be telling us what their first priorities are, so that we know where to put money when it becomes available. And it's not enough that we decide. They're working with the schools every single day, all of the students. We need to have them at the table when we're spending money. It's an important project. But I do hope that the families who spoke here tonight, I hope they speak to the school board as well.
Thank you. Councillor Thorpe, final word?
Thanks, Your Worship. Yes, I was just going to assure that Councillor Eastmere that was the intent, and that I did have some type of wording in there asking for a look at options, and I think I referenced innovative type solutions that might be part of the answer to this problem. So it was to do with those possible solutions. It was to do with the unallocated pedestrian safety funding, and also just a general sense of where the city's at with our triage of priorities across the city. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. Thank you. The next item is delegations unrelated to agenda items. Again, three speakers, Mr. Shaw, Mr. Hoolan, and Mr. Clark, and I would just remind all of you, 5 minutes. After 4 minutes, I'll give you a minute warning.
Yep.
Mr. Shaw, if you can state your name for the record, and we'll proceed.
Kevin Shaw, Victoria Crescent. When the city of Nanaimo bought 3 downtown properties in July of 2021 for a transit exchange, it was well before the province decriminalized what has become open drug use. Since then, we have seen social street disorder rise, especially in the downtown, especially in the hard-hit Victoria Crescent area. Despite protest rallies saying an exchange was not wanted anywhere in the 500 block terminal, despite strong opposition in a city survey, and over a 1,000 name petition against, and speeches to this council, I appear before you now to ask what security will be in place when the scheduled downtown transit exchange presumably opens in the fall. Just a few short weeks ago, the Cowichan Valley Regional District voted to remove all the bus shelters at its main Duncan Transit Exchange at Village Green Mall because of what management says are safety concerns during the day and overnight too, when buses are not running. Way too much loitering, way too much open drug, alcohol use, and camping. Sadly, a person even overdosed and died in a bus shelter there. The CVRD says society challenges are beyond the capacity of the district to control. Here in Nanaimo, a porta potty, all fenced in, was still burnt and vandalized at the current exchange across from Port Place Mall. It was not replaced, and now there is no bathroom there. And several bus shelters have been removed just a quarter block from that exchange. The reasons: at one of those shelters, a person received a blow from an axe, and at the other, groups of people living on the street had taken it over. And very, very sadly, a man sleeping at a bus stop adjacent to the Port Place Exchange was stabbed several times by a person he knew. The victim staggered to an area he knew, Victoria Crescent in Cavan, and unfortunately he died. Right now, another awning is being torn down on the Cres because of all the fires set in doorways and alcoves there and the open drug use and violence. Some businesses have closed, moved, or about to close. One restaurant just this month broke into again, the third time in just over a month. And with tears in his eyes, the owner says this will likely be his last year. We are seeing those living on Nanaimo streets growing, the report you received this month. The stats are not decreasing. The provincial government is continuing with a clouded vision, which does not seem to be stopping the misery for anyone. Nanaimo RCMP has just released statistics saying reported crime is down, but the severity of crimes over the last 5 years is on the rise, adding a lot of social problems that are left alone become problems. A hydro pole was recently set ablaze in our area. Nanaimo Fire says there is an increase in small fires being set on the street, beside buildings, in alcoves. It's up 7.5% for the first 3 months of this year. And there has been a massive 164% increase in the number of medical aid calls for Nanaimo Fire Rescue since the BC government began its drug decriminalization program a year ago. 2 years are left in the drug decrim project, and the Premier says he's forging ahead. Even though we have not really seen much in the way of detox recovery from the province, nor mandatory complex care facilities for those who really need mental help. Some describe the revolving door court system as a joke. To combat crime and disorder, Las Vegas now has private transit security who are stationed at exchanges, they monitor shelters, and those even getting on a bus. Vancouver has its own transit police, all to make sure everyone is safe. At the proposed new downtown Nanaimo Exchange, crime prevention by environmental design, lights, cameras, and sight lines, I'm afraid just won't cut it. Will there be permanent 24-hour security to deal with the problems that will likely happen at the public washroom, at the 5 bus shelters, and on the bus exchange property? We do not want to wait for fires to happen, unsavory loitering, people to get hurt. What is the city doing? What are its partners going to be doing? This exchange is on city land. One question I would like answered now: will security be stationed there full time? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Shaw. I appreciate that. Mr. Lindsay?
Your Worship, if the question is, will there be transit police like Mr. Shaw recognized in other locations, that would be a question for the RDM, but I'm not aware of any plans for them to add transit police at this time. Would the city be providing full-time security at a location like this or others in the downtown? The short answer is no. However, Council has been very supportive in the creation of the Community Safety Officer program. We have a number of safety officers came on in the last, I guess just over a year ago now. And there's a report out right now where a review of the downtown safety plan with recommendations coming back to a near future GPC on that program. So, sorry, again, the short answer is no, but the longer answer is the city is certainly invested in community safety officers, which would be in and around the downtown, including around the area of the exchange.
Fair to say, Mr. Shaw, we're well aware of the concerns. Councillor Armstrong?
Thank you. I'm just wondering if you're aware that transit supervisors are out on a regular basis, and I'm sure we'll see them there a lot. Like I do share your concerns. I understand them, that there can be issues, but I think right now we have to wait, and this is a terrible thing to say, but it's a wait to see what happens thing. And hopefully with the measures the RDN will be taking, that we won't see the same issues that we're seeing in some places as well. I know it's you know, we're automatically assuming it's going to be bad.
Your Worship, just wondering then, with the CVRD pulling out some bus shelters, and even here with some of the crimes in the downtown core, will the bus shelters here at least have a lock on them?
Mr. Shaw, I can't answer that tonight. As you know, transit is administered through the Regional District of Nanaimo. I'm not evading the question, but I just think it's not a place or a thing I can answer for you tonight.
Oh, hopefully I'll meet with staff and we can get some answers and have a talk with Mr. Lindsay. That's great. And Mr. Sims too.
Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The next is Dan Hula, Declaration of Emergencies and the World Health Organization Pandemic Treaty. Mr. Hula, staff advised me that your presentation includes a series of slides, and the closing one is in fact a 5-minute video. You will have 5 minutes in total, so if you wish to run that video, you're going to run the video and that will be it, or alternatively you could make your presentation, but not both.
I'm just using 30 seconds of the video, thank you.
Thank you. I'll let you know at 4 minutes. So please, if you can introduce yourself for the record, and away we go.
Okay. Good evening. My name is Dan Hula. First, a little bit about myself. I've taught for 38 years in public school, ranging from kindergarten to first-year university, mostly at the junior high level. I have a master's in educational policy studies, specifically in international and intercultural education from the University of Alberta. I've served on many committees, including provincial ones like the Global Education and Outdoor Environmental Education in Alberta and Committee for Action on Social Justice in BC. I really enjoy research. I don't have television, so I research. I do it probably about 2 hours a day, and I've done that for years because I like to check the long-term validity of any sources. Last meeting, I thoroughly debunked the human-caused climate change hoax. If we're still in a climate emergency now, then it appears to be knowingly based on disinformation. Emergency acts around the world have become an excuse for more government control. If it's done for climate change, then it can be done for other myths with no evidence. So tonight, I will discuss the proposed pandemic treaty from the World Health Organization. The Nanaimo Emergency Program Bylaw, number 7202 from 2014, clearly shows that local authority is at all times responsible for the general direction and control of the city's response to an emergency or disaster. The global protocol goes like this. The World Health Organization directives are passed down to countries, then to provinces, then to local governments. This currently is occurring in over 190 countries, so it already has the appearance of a one world government being in control, but the local governments do the actual implementation and therefore assume the accountability and liability. The World Health Organization has the veneer of an altruistic organization, but their origin and record reveal a history of fraud and abuse. The bottom line is the World Health Organization is self-appointed and unaccountable. In 1987, their smallpox vaccines in Africa caused a wave of AIDS. In 2020, a Freedom of Information Act showed that in 2020, the Canadian government already knew the COVID vaccines were not safe before they purchased them. Published studies are already showing the consistency of the vaccines with turbocancers, myocarditis, blood clots, and miscarriages. In the last month, 6 new papers have come out showing this. Japan knows what's going on. They've already halted their vaccination program, and they have massive protests against this pandemic treaty. Same thing, lack of trust of the World Health Organization, just like Holland. Saying that the one world government directives is democracy, it's like saying tax increases that create a greater homeless population and a lower standard of health care is fiscally responsible management. If local decision-making comes down to essentially rubber stamping directives from staffers who get those from organizations who ultimately get them from the World Health Organization or the United Nations, then a local council's role is diminished to that of a trick poodle. What citizens want instead is a council of lions who think and research and authentically engage in what's best for their own citizens. I'm asking council to use their authority to not endorse any new motions that would limit decision-making to directives from these organizations, and to find and rescind any and all such existing motions. This is Christine Anderson, She's a German member of parliament from the European Parliament from Germany.
This whole COVID madness, this so-called pandemic, it was just a test balloon, a gigantic test balloon. Well, for what, you ask? Well, to see how far they could go, to see what exactly they would have to do to get free individuals in a free and democratic society to consent to being forced into compliance. That's what they were trying to establish. That's what they were trying to figure out. And they have figured it out.
So, I hope you have the freedom and inclination to engage this time with me with questions or comments, unlike last meeting's presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Under 5 minutes, not seeing any questions.
Okay, and you can hold your applause because we don't want double standards here.
The next is Alan Clark, Reclimate and Council's role. Folks, you know the rules. Let's not try and push it. Sir, show respect for council or I will have you removed from the chamber, all right?
Understood.
Thank you.
Likewise.
Mr. Clark, introduce yourself for the record, please. You'll have 5 minutes. The 4th minute, I'll let you know.
Okay, good evening. My name is Alan Clark and I live in Chase River. Tonight I'd like to talk a little bit about the BC government and the climate that they have created in this province. Mr. Eby and some of his cabinet are living on the edge of madness, and here are a few examples. Carbon tax. After 16 years of a carbon tax, it has not changed the atmosphere or the climate one iota. Yet Mr. Eby has never been more gung-ho for this tax, despite this tax creating more poverty and homelessness. Legalizing possession of all opioids. Despite having a record overdose calls to 911 in 2023, over 42,000 calls in the province of British Columbia, and a record 2,511 overdose deaths, Eby is boldly stating that he's saving lives. Housing. Mr. Eby is now building taxpayer-subsidized, affordable two-bedroom homes, but you need a minimum annual salary of $134,000 to qualify. Who the heck's he serving? Not those in need. Fentanyl. Mr. Eby is now giving fentanyl to children without parental permission or consent. Does anyone here think that this is actions of a sane, rational premier or cabinet, or making for a healthy climate for us all to live in? Now the BC government, along with the blessing of this council, wants to install transitional housing in my neighborhood. I just lost my spot on here. Okay. And it's going to bring a climate of fear and destruction, including robbery, stranger assault, vandalism, and danger to the community of Chase River. With this proposed transitional housing, it's doomed for failure. I appeared before you at the last council meeting and requested that this council work with BC Housing to make this a drug-free facility. One councillor informed me that if they asked for that, the provincial government would close their briefcase and walk away and no housing. And they could not allow that to happen with all the homeless in Nanaimo. Mayor Krog made a closing statement that shocked me, stating a man's home is his castle, and he's entitled to indulge in his castle like he did. And therefore, this was no different for those residing in transitional housing. Well, Mr. Krog, Mayor Krog, I can assume that you worked hard for your castle. I work hard for my castle. This transitional housing is not their homes. It's a helping hand that's funded by the taxpayer, not a license to come into a community and create mayhem and destroy it. There are times that we have to stand up for what we believe or what we were elected for. While me, standing here alone, this council may not have much clout with BC government. But with an association of BC mayors, it could be a driving force in bringing back some sanity to Nanaimo in this province. I ask once again this council to do what they're elected to do, and that is work in the best interest of the people in Nanaimo and not allow this government to destroy this beautiful city anymore. And I strongly suggest you insist on the BC government that transitional housing in Chase River be a drug-free facility. It'll be a win-win situation. And if BC government cannot see that, then it would be better to lose this transitional housing rather than destroy another neighborhood. One last comment. You mentioned about your political experience. I have none. And you mentioned also that people don't want any kind of housing or any kind of facility for needy people. The people I talk to in my community would be very accepting of a drug-free facility. 100% said no to one where they can have drugs. And just one last comment. On the news tonight, just as I was leaving, there was a news item that said 30 councillors in British Columbia have now demanded from EB to cancel.
If you could wrap up, please.
Yes, I will. To cancel the legalization or the decriminalization of drugs. And as a consequence, they're now going back to their individual councils to make it official.
Mr. Clark, I told everyone.
Yep, that's good. I appreciate
sticking to
that.
the 5 minutes.
So any comments, any questions?
Not seeing any questions. Thank you for your presentation. I note we're at 9 o'clock, Ms. Gurry. We'll take the evening break. Thank you. And the next item will be reports, and that's the state of the Nanaimo economy. Looking forward to that. We could do that first, and then that would allow the delegation to speak and not have to wait here till the end of an evening that's going to take a little while yet. And Councillor Hemmons, I believe you have something to say about this particular matter, 12H.
Thank you, Worship. I'll be recusing myself because I live in the immediate neighborhood. Thank you.
Very good, thank you. If I may then, let's call forward item 12H. It's a rezoning application number RA491 and property disposition number LD 3857, 120 Needham Street, 515, 535, 545, and 575 Nicholl Street. There's a long run. Mr. Holm, you'll introduce this, I understand, please.
Sorry, I'm just catching up to the change here. Appreciate, well, I just take a minute. So this is a rezoning application in the South End neighborhood. As you've indicated, it's on Nicholl Street. Properties are outlined overhead on the map. This is a proposal from Urban Solutions Architecture Limited to rezone the subject properties from currently their Corridor 3, Core 3, and single dwelling residential R1 to Core 1, Corridor 1 zone with some site-specific provisions, site-specific density, and site-specific building height. Of interest, this is the first application to come forward before council since the province changed the requirements or limited the ability of council to hold public hearings in certain cases. In this case, council is actually prohibited from holding a public hearing with respect to this bylaw, as at least 50% of the proposed development is residential. So at this point, I'm just highlighting this for interest's sake, because this is the first application to come forward this way. Notification has actually taken place prior to council's consideration of first reading of the bylaw. So statutory notification has already taken place. That occurred April 11th. Again, what's proposed here is rezoning to support development on the corner of Nickel and Needham. The concept, it's conceptual at this point. Concept plan is a 6 to 7 story development consisting of 127 residential units. The public information meeting was held for the project in June. And as you can see, there's conceptual perspectives overhead there on the screen. There are a number of conditions recommended to be secured as part of the project as a requirement of approval: community amenity contribution, road dedication, statutory right-of-way, and property disposition. A small portion of city property, roughly 54 square meters, I believe. It's 1.5 meters wide. Is proposed to be disposed of, so that would be acquired by the owner, subject to requirements around property disposition, advertising, and approval that would have to proceed first. There'd be a small portion you can see highlighted there. Thank you. That would be disposed of, sold to the developer and incorporated into the development, and as well as property consolidation. So lot consolidation would be another condition of approval. Should council support readings tonight prior to bringing the bylaw back for adoption, those items would be secured. I'm happy to take questions if you have any. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Holm. And just to confirm, the portion of the property that the city is being asked to sell, it isn't even a laneway, it's more of a pathway in terms of its width. So good. I understand we have Morgan Burt and Mitchell Meredith, Urban Solutions Architecture, as a delegation on this. Can you hear me okay, and are you ready to proceed? Please.
Hi there. Yes, we can hear you fine. Thank you. Given that this is the first time council's seen this application, we prepared a short presentation. So just to walk you through some of the high level points. Just initially, thank you for your time this evening in reviewing our application for the project located on the northeast corner of Nickel and Needham. This is a 6-story wood frame project over 2 levels of concrete parking structure. The project is just under 85,000 gross square feet and proposes to house 127 rental units, which will include 9 live-work units that front Nickel Street. There will be a total of 144 parking stalls as well. The project has both indoor and outdoor amenity space. Indoor amenity space will be composed of a gym area at 1,333 square feet, while outdoor will have a rooftop garden at 4,700 square feet, as well as a small ground floor amenity located at the lane along Needham. If I could just turn to page 3 in the presentation. Thank you. Through the application process, the team liaised with the South End Community Association, SNAMUC, as well as hosted a public information session for the community members. Communications with the South End Community Association and the general public were both positive. The majority of individuals we spoke with were supportive of the application and seeing market rental housing coming to this neighborhood. One comment which popped up a number of times was surrounding Nickel Street and the ability for community members to safely cross to the west side of the road, in particular children as they make their way to Bayview Elementary School. And I recognize through the agenda tonight that's a relevant topic to council here, and they're aware of that item. If we could just flip to page 4. Just another sketch here of the building from the perspective from Needham Street looking northwest. Through the design of the project, the team wanted to provide a frontage along Needham Street that was referenced within the South End neighborhood plan. As such, we have developed an activated area that can be enjoyed by both residents and the local community. This is through the use of small pocket parks and seating nodes. There will be items such as a bike repair station, which is intended to support Nanaimo's initiatives of being a bike-friendly city, as well as seating and a book library for the community to interact with. This area will have lots of greenery with plants and creeping vines, and our hope is that the community is attracted to this area and will naturally gravitate to supporting the activation. This area will also nicely support what has been outlined for the corner of Needham and Halliburton in the community plan. And a portion of this design is being credited as a CAC, while the remainder of the CAC will be paid in cash. At this time, I'll turn this back to Jeremy Holm. I appreciate your attention and consideration of our application this evening, and I'm happy to answer any questions that Mayor and Council might have.
Thank you very much. Much appreciated. Mr. Holmes finished. Councillor Thorpe, recommended motions?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Your Worship.
Sorry.
Thank you. I'll first move that council approve the disposition of city-owned property at 545 Nickel Street to Nickel Street Residential Holdings Incorporated for $25,000 and direct the mayor and corporate officer to execute the necessary documents to effect the property disposition transaction.
Seconded, Councillor Perino. Councillor Perino.
Sorry, Your Worship, if I could just ask Mr. Holm a quick question through you. These are going to be rentals, I understand? Rental units, is that correct? And I just wondered, 1, 2, 3 bedrooms? Any idea yet?
Actually, I can't speak to that directly. I'm not sure if it would be appropriate, Your Worship, to ask the delegation to answer that. Thank you.
If you could answer Councillor Perino's question with respect to the types of units, numbers of bedrooms, that would be helpful. Thank you.
Certainly, very happy to do so. We have a spread of units. There is 49 one-bedroom, 27 two-bedroom, 6 three-bedroom, and 9 live-work units, which all have a single bedroom inside those.
Excellent, excellent. I'll be in full support. Thank you very much. It's great to get the shovel in the ground.
Thank you, Councillor Perino. Not seeing any further questions. Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. Councillor Thorpe, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll move that zoning amendment bylaw 2024, number 4500.221, to rezone 120 Needham Street, 515, 535, 545, and 575 Nickel Street from single dwelling residential R1 and community corridor COR3 to residential corridor COR1 with site-specific provisions. Pass first reading.
Seconded, Councillor Perino. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. Councillor Thorpe.
Thank you. I'll move that the bylaw pass second reading.
Seconded, Councillor Manley. Any discussion? Not seeing any. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. Councillor Thorpe.
And I'll move that the bylaw pass third reading.
Seconded, Councillor Perino. All those in favor? Any opposed? Councillor Armstrong, you're in favor? None opposed. Motion carries. And the final motion, Councillor Thorpe.
Thank you,
please.
Your Worship. I'll move that Council direct staff to secure the conditions related to zoning amendment bylaw 2024, number 4500.221, as outlined in the conditions of rezoning section of the staff report dated 2024, April 22nd, prior to final adoption.
Seconded, Councillor Perino. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. Thank you. If someone could get Councillor Hemmons back in, please. Thank you very much. Now, to you, Mr. Corson, and then Ms. Manhas, please.
Yes, great. Thanks, Your Worship.
Nanaimo economy.
So we have Ms. Manhas, our Economic Development Officer, here tonight to provide you with her annual update on the state of the Nanaimo economy. Ms. Manhas is going to focus on some of the key messages from this year's work. And I've asked her to spend a few minutes discussing the composition of the population from a marketing perspective. I think you're going to find her presentation quite interesting and brief.
Thank you very much. Ms. Manhas, welcome. Nice to see you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Corson, and good evening, Your Worship and Council. As you know, each year we analyze various business and economic indicators to see how our local economy is doing, and we also look at what British Columbia's economy, how they're doing, to see which direction we're headed in. And all of this information is in the materials that you've received. And this year, as Mr. Corson mentioned, we thought we would do a little bit of a deeper dive into who lives in Nanaimo. On average, we have over 3,200 people moving to the RDN each year, and the highest growth over the next decade is projected in the 25 to 44 age category. That category is expected to grow by 9,500 persons. And despite the rapid growth in our population, you saw earlier from our presentation that our housing requirements, we're still meeting those. We had 1,170 new housing units that were built in 2023. And at near 365 million in building permits issued in last year in 2023, that was actually a very strong year for having really high interest rates. That was the second highest on record in terms of building permit values for residential permits. And most of our developments now, 78% of the new units that were built last year were in condo, apartment, and townhouses type of dwellings. So we're really moving towards the denser urban landscape that we've envisioned in our city plan. We saw a decline in average housing prices and sales across most markets in British Columbia in 2023. And again, that was due to the high interest rate as well as the high inflation environment. We saw slight improvements in rental vacancy rates. They moved from 2.2% to 2.7% in the city of Nanaimo. There were an additional 210 housing units that were available in the rental supply last year compared to the year before. Despite that, we did see average rents rise by approximately 9%, and that's some of the landlords offloading their higher mortgage payments down to their tenants. We saw good growth in the labor force as well in 2023, but we saw a decline in job postings, and that's a trend that happened across British Columbia. This led to higher unemployment rates in the city of Nanaimo. Our unemployment rate for last year was 4.8%. It was still lower than BC and Canada. They were above 5%. Overall, in 2023, was marked by really flat economic performance in BC. And this is going to continue into 2024. We're seeing a slowing down of the global and national economy. The province of British Columbia was one of the top performers in the last decade in terms of in competition with other provinces. That's not going to continue anymore. That's due to the higher interest rates because they hit BC a little bit harder than the other provinces, as we have a higher household debt load in the province of BC, and that's mainly due to the fact that we have higher home prices. We are, in fact, now the most expensive province in Canada for real estate. And also contributing to the slowdown is the near completion of many projects that are happening in British Columbia. These are some of the mega projects like the LNG Canada Coastal Gas Line, Trans Mountain expansion, and Site C projects. A lot of those projects are coming to near completion. As well, in 2023, we saw a decline in exports, 16%, compared to the year before. That was due to weaker global demand, as well as we had port strikes last year. But there is a lot of optimism around critical minerals exploration in British Columbia. There's an improved outlook for trade opportunities as well in 2024, and there's potential for investments in life sciences, clean tech, as well as there's a lot of high-profile sports events that are coming to the province of British Columbia. And these include the Grey Cup later on this year, Invictus Games in 2025, as well as the FIFA Cup in 2026. So Nanaimo's population is near 107,000 for 2023, and by 2025, this is expected to reach over 120,000 people. And I just want to mention that our population figures will be slightly different depending on which source we use. We have over 20,000 people that are between the ages of 25 and 64 that have a university degree or higher. Nearly 8,200 people were self-employed in 2023. 3,800 people worked from home in 2023. City of Nanaimo has over 45,000 households. An estimated 8,000 of those live below the poverty line. Near 3,800 have income over 200,000. Our visible minority population is over 10,000 people, and we have around 17,000 people that are first-generation immigrant population. Our median household income is $81,000, and our average household income is over $99,000, and our household size is 2.3. And if we look at the City of Nanaimo's, if we drop a pin, for instance, at 455 Wallace Street and do a 60-minute drive radius, which would be pretty much our catchment area for our businesses would have access to over 266,000 customers, near 124,000 people that are in the workforce. And these facts are also useful for when we're looking at our city amenities, our recreational facilities, and lots of events. They draw these people from the near communities. Here on the top, you see household income in Nanaimo in comparison to British Columbia. The white dotted line is British Columbia, and the purple bars are Nanaimo. You can see in the lower income ranges, particularly between 40 to 80,000, Nanaimo tends to have a larger percentage of household compared to British Columbia. And in the higher income ranges, if you look at household income, for instance, over 200,000, we have 9% of Nanaimo households that fall into this, and then 15% for British Columbia. The right-hand side graph there shows you 15 years of people that are 15 years of age by industry. And this is basically looking at how people are employed. We pretty much mirror British Columbia for the most part. And where we deviate is we have a higher concentration of healthcare and retail trade. We tend to have a slightly lower concentration of manufacturing and professional, scientific, and technical. And most occupation in Nanaimo are white collar, over 25,000 of them. The service industry is the second largest, over 17,000 of them. And the blue collar occupations are just over 8,000. And on the right hand there you see the age pyramid for Nanaimo in comparison to British Columbia. We pretty much mirror BC for our age pyramid. We slightly deviate from British Columbia as you reach above 65 age, where we have a little bit higher concentration of over 65 people compared to British Columbia. So let's take a deeper look at our population. Environic Analytics is a data and analytics company. They integrate geographic, demographic, and psychographic data from many sources to come up with 67 unique segments. They call these PRISM profiles. And essentially every postal code in Canada can be divided into these segments. They've given these profiles interesting names like the A-list, Kickback Country, Eat, Pray, Love, Stressed in Suburbia, and so on. To provide more information and insights, these 67 segments, they've divided them further into 20 social groups and 8 life stage groups. The life stage groups are basically divided into young, family, and mature. Those are further divided into young singles, couples, starter families, and families are divided into 3 more categories, and then the mature are divided into age of maintainer, presence of children at home. And then the social groups are essentially derived, so they look at the geographical context, whether they live in an urban or a rural environment, home language that's spoken, affluence, family status, age of maintainer, and ethnicity. So the social group ranks are based on average income as well. So where you see one indicates the highest average income and 7 is the lowest. And these groupings, they reflect similarities and patterns and trends. So what does profiling help us understand? It can help us understand, for instance, from a government perspective, who our residents are, and from a business perspective, who our customers are and what our markets are like. So government can use this information to decide what services to place and where, and businesses can use this information to find more customers, as well as, how to market to those customers and potentially upsell to those customers as well. So there you just see examples of the different types of questions profiling can help you answer. So in terms of the top segments for the city of Nanaimo, highest number of households in Nanaimo, 18%, are in the category called Boomer Bliss. And comparatively, in Canada, that category is 1.8% of households. And the index on the very right there, it shows you how we compare with Canada. So 100% would mean that we're on par with Canada.
Just thinking that.
We actually have 10%, 10 times more Boomer Bliss compared to the Canadian average. The second largest category is called Just Getting By, and 13.6% of households in Nanaimo fall into that category. Comparatively in Canada, that is 2.3%. So suburban sports is the third largest category in Nanaimo. 2.9% of households in Nanaimo fall into that category. And in Canada, that percentage is 2.3%. So if we look at the top 5 categories in Nanaimo, that accounts for basically 64% of households in Nanaimo. And comparatively in Canada, it's 9.5% of households would fall into those 5 categories. And I've just sort of included where BC ranks as well on the right-hand side. So there on the top left, you see the top 3 PRISM segments in the city of Nanaimo. So Boomer Bliss is 8,115 households. Just Getting By, second largest category, is 6,137 households. Suburban Sports is 5,830 households in Nanaimo. And if we look at the life stages of these of our population on the bottom left there, you see that the largest group is the older family and empty nests, and the second largest is the middle-aged families, and the third largest is younger singles and couples. And looking at the social groups, which is on the right-hand side at the bottom there, younger urban mix is the largest social group, followed by fairly closely by the older suburban, and so on. So putting it all together, we're coming to the end here. So the number 9 there, what that means is that's what they call a SESI score, socioeconomic status indicator. It reflects a variety of indicators such as your average income, discretionary income, educational attainment, value of your private dwellings, average net worth, and household size, etc. So who are the Boomer Bliss? Boomer Bliss consists of older couples and families. Nearly 2/3 of maintainers are over the age of 55 years old, and households include both retirees and those that are near retirement. They have university and college educations, and they hold white-collar jobs in management, education, health, and government services. Their upper middle class is about 35% above average. This allows them to own comfortable single detached homes that were built between 1960 and 2000. And many of the adults are longtime residents, and they've paid off their mortgages, and they show little interest in leaving their now empty nests. Their sample social value is work ethic. Their average household net worth is $1.1 million. For leisure, they enjoy the arts, including theater productions, art galleries, rock and country music concerts, and outdoor activities. They like golfing, fishing. Boomer Bliss members list gardening as one of their favorite forms of exercise. For vehicles, they score high for owning SUVs, and in this segment, it's likely to be an imported model. For shopping, home is really their castle. They like doing remodeling projects and browsing the aisles of home improvement stores. Their strong work ethic has helped them to build their wealth. And their financial security is also boosted by the help of full-service investment brokers and estate planners. They donate between $1,000 to $5,000 to Canadian charities each year. While they're more comfortable with traditional media, they also like using tablet or wide range of applications like sending emails and reading ebooks, shopping and playing games. And many of them mark news, investments, sports, and health as their favorite bookmarks. They go on YouTube, listen to podcasts, and post-COVID, they want to continue shopping online, even though some of their favorite stores have reopened. So that's just a little synopsis of the top segment in Nanaimo. And the second largest group is just getting by. These are the most economically challenged of all the segments, as you can tell by their CESI score, which is 67. They're younger, low-income singles and single-parent families. In their dense neighborhoods, nearly 45% of them are under the age of 45. More than half are single, divorced, or separated. And over a third are lone parent families, typically with younger children. Residents tend to be third-plus generation Canadians with low education levels and low-level jobs in sales, the services, trades, and manufacturing. Most households can only afford to rent units in older, low-rise apartment buildings. This group is young and mobile, though, and more than half have moved in the past 5 years with the hope of climbing the socioeconomic ladder. Surveys show that they desire to improve their prospects in the popularity of online courses and management training courses. And without deep pockets, they engage in low-cost activities like going to parks, city gardens, and auto shows. The young singles and families pursue a youthful lifestyle on budget. Their wide-ranging leisure activities include billiards and bowling, motorcycling, and going to nightclubs. Nearly everyone in this segment shops at discount grocery, clothing, and department stores. Walmart tends to be a particularly favorite one for them. At home, these on-the-go young people, they make relatively light media audience. Their highest TV-rated shows are teen dramas, music videos, and extreme sports. For radios, they like to listen to stations that play dance, hip-hop, class rock music. They rarely pick up a daily newspaper, but they enjoy reading entertainment and celebrity magazines. They are accepting of multiculturalism and diversity of family. Rather than being guided by reason and logic, they often make decisions based on feelings and emotions. They have significant financial concerns regarding their future. And the last group that we're going to go over a little bit here is the suburban sports. So 8 in 10 households own a home, typically a single detached house or a duplex. The households are nearly evenly divided between couples and families, and maintainers range from 35 to 65 years of age, and they have children of all ages. They're moderately educated. Most adults have completed high school or college, and they hold service sector and blue-collar jobs in natural resources and the trades. And thanks to their dual incomes, these households earn solid upper middle class incomes. They enjoy family-friendly activities like snowboarding, baseball, basketball, and swimming. They also enjoy watching sports, rooting for their favorite pro hockey, soccer, and football teams. they enroll their kids in soccer camps, they take cruises and go to sightseeing trips. They often take trips to Mexico. This cohort also enjoys traveling within Canada. They particularly like traveling within British Columbia. And regular exercise is important for this segment, not just for their kids. While they're not the earliest tech adopters, they have embraced mobile phones and smart devices, as TV watches and speakers for entertainment, as well as text messaging and responding to classified ads and downloading coupons. Traditional media is still popular with them. They watch curling, football on TV, listen to classic rock, country music on the radio, and they read outdoor magazines. And despite their solid incomes, they still have financial concerns regarding their future, especially because they want to leave a legacy for the future generations. So this sort of gives you an idea of some of the broader summaries of the three segments in the city of Nanaimo. And we have the ability to also map all of this kind of data as well. And I just want to say in closing, thank you for your time and your attention. And I want to mention that the State of Economy Nanaimo report will be available for download tomorrow morning on our city's website, and happy to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you very much. It was a most fascinating report, I must say. I enjoy reading statistical information, and it paints, I think, what is a pretty positive picture of the city, for which we're grateful. Councillor Gesselbrock. Good. Councillor Himmons.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Ms. Manhas. I was struck by our top demographic being the boomers, and then the second being just getting by. So there's that, it represents that kind of diversity that we know Nanaimo has. But the just getting by, we're more than 10% higher than the Canadian average. Is there any kind of more information around that, why that might be?
I think there's a lot of young people moving into our city, probably from the mainland as well as Victoria. It has to do with cost of living right now, and also this group does not have education. They haven't pursued higher education, and that unfortunately puts them in a tough spot. So a lot of times they're being pushed out of the larger cities and moving into cities like ours, and because they see stronger prospects here in terms of moving forward after taking courses and stuff like that. And we are still more affordable than a lot of those other cities. So yeah, we're going to see that. But this information is really informative because it helps us to see how and where we can help this population. You know, they tend to, if you graph them out, they tend to be living very close to transportation centers and things like that, so that they can move around easily. And yeah, so it's informative looking at these things. I mean, some of it surprises you. In terms of what we see in the data.
Yeah, I found that statistic very surprising. So very fascinating. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Thorpe.
Thank you very much, Your Worship, and through you, if I may, to Ms. Manhas, thank you. A very interesting report to read, and I appreciate your work, because without a healthy economy, then we can't do all of the good things that we want to be able to do in our city. A question, though, or two questions, really. First of all, am I correct in assuming that you work closely in collaboration with the Nanaimo Prosperity Corporation? And secondly, has this information been shared, or will it be shared with Tourism Nanaimo? Because I think they'd be very interested.
Yes, absolutely. We work very closely with the Nanaimo Prosperity Corporation. We're a hybrid model in Nanaimo for economic development delivery. So everything that's in the economic development strategy, we'll be working on it together. So we look forward to that. I'm glad that that corporation's got an executive director now, and they're going to start getting going. So that's going to be fantastic. And yes, absolutely, we are happy to share this information with Tourism Nanaimo or anybody that would find it useful for their targeting efforts and things like that. So
Exactly.
we're happy to share it.
Yes, thanks again for your good work.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I suspect if the evening wasn't so long, there'd probably be a few more questions. Ms. Manhas, thank you for bearing with us till nearly 10 o'clock, like above and beyond the call of duty. The next item is amendments to council procedure bylaw. Ms. Gurry.
Thank you, Your Worship. So before you in your agenda this evening is the proposed amendments to the council procedure bylaw. On March 11th, 2024, staff presented the Governance and Priorities Committee with proposed amendments to the council procedure bylaw as it relates to public hearings and delegations resulting from Bill 44, Housing Statutes, Residential Development Amendment Act 2023, and other housekeeping amendments. The recommendations were forwarded to the March 18th council meeting for final consideration through the consent items, and during that meeting, council had additional questions regarding delegations on the rezoning bylaw at first reading and where the public hearing is prohibited, so the topic was referred back to the next GPC meeting on March 25th. So a further staff report to clarify that topic was provided at the March 25th GPC. And at that meeting, the committee changed its vote to the two recommendations previously endorsed as it relates to delegations on rezoning bylaws at first reading when public hearing is prohibited, but reaffirmed the remainder of recommendations. So all the recommendations from that meeting were then ratified at the 2024 April 8th council meeting. So the next step is for you to provide 3 readings this evening if you so choose, and after that this bylaw requires notification under section 94 of the community charter, so that will be done prior to adoption, and I'm happy to answer any questions council may have.
Thank you very much. I understand Councillor Brown may wish to make a motion to vary by point 19.17C. Councillor Brown, is that correct?
Oh, it's a long meeting, Your Worship, but yes.
Ms. Gurry, in terms of procedure, before I accept the motion that I'll ask Councillor Thorpe to read that bylaw amendments, et cetera, is there some wording that we can, I suspect that Councillor Brown's proposal will pass, so.
Yes, so Your Worship, Council Brown had let me know that he may plan to make this motion. So I think to make it cleanest, if he would like to remove the proposed amendment 1917C, he could make that motion now, Your Worship. If it passes, you can give 3 readings to the bylaw, and that will not be included in the amendment bylaw.
So Councillor Brown, I take it you're making the motion to remove 19.17C, is that correct?
Thanks, Your Worship. If there's a seconder, I can briefly speak.
Yes, is there a seconder? Councillor Manley, please, thank you. Councillor Brown?
Thanks, Your Worship, and I apologize for not catching on to this earlier in the GPC discussion just recently. Essentially, I don't think we've last term and this term, for the most part, we've had a problem with this where motions arise too quickly out of from a delegation. I do think there is times where that council will want to exercise that, and I understand this is to set a slightly higher standard or a higher vote count, but I think there is times where there may be division, and whether you're on the majority side or not, I think it's still nice to have that flexibility and adaptability. I think secondary to that, though, is not having it could potentially start to force some worse behaviors around triggering of special meetings, increased notice of motions, and things like that. So all taken all together, I just don't think we actually need this, and relying on just good practice and already solid procedure bylaw is enough to ensure that council is never really taken by surprise. Thank you.
Thank you. I happen to agree with you. The motion's been moved unless there's discussion. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. Councillor Thorpe, if you want to read the recommended motions now that we've amended it slightly.
I'll move first that Council Procedure Bylaw Amendment Bylaw 2024, number 7272.04, a bylaw to include amendments resulting from Bill 44 as it relates to public hearings and other housekeeping amendments, pass first reading.
Seconded, Councillor Hemmens. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries.
And I'll move that the bylaw pass second reading.
Seconded, Councillor Manley. Any discussion? Not seeing any. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Councillor Thorpe, please.
Thank you. I'll then move that the bylaw pass third reading.
Seconded, Councillor Hemmens. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. Thank you very much. We're now on to Parks and Recreation Fees and Charges Amendment. Mr. Harding, you're going to introduce this, but I suspect we're going to be passing it over to Ms. Osborne. Is that correct?
Well, Your Worship, this is some changes. If council remembers, last year we spent some considerable time redoing and updating the Parks, Recreation, and Culture fee structure. It came in place in September. Since September, we became aware of some areas that just weren't working well, and staff brought back a report to the Finance and Audit meeting March 20th with a number of changes. And tonight are those changes. We're looking for first three readings to change those areas. If you want us to go through the specific ones, myself or Ms. Osborne can go through it.
Thank you very much.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. As Mr. Harding expressed, we are here tonight to review the fees and charges recommendations amendments that we brought forward to Finance and Audit on March 20th in 2024. We received feedback following the implementation of our fees and charges bylaw in September, primarily around the parks and open spaces and the impact on the smaller type events that were being booked in such facilities as Matheo Sutton Park and Bowen Park. And so as a result of that, we did some engagement with the community and have come back with recommended fees on what would be better representation and more appropriate for those types of bookings. And so we went over the fees and charges at the Finance and Audit, so I'm here tonight just to answer any questions, but primarily for the three readings. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Everyone had a chance to read it. Councillor Gesselbrock?
Thank you. Thanks for the work on this and trying to capture like the very wide diversity of usage in the parks and trying to make it so that, you know, we're covering the necessary costs and being fair and also supporting the different groups that we want to. So I support the fees and charges amendment. One set of groups that I'm curious, I think that we should just keep an eye on to see how it's working and impacting, I think, is those groups of like 0 to 20 people that are for profit, that are producing services like around youth care, also exercise services that are using parks, you know, with smaller groups of people for, you know, an hour or two weightlifting or exercising, where their margins aren't really that big, and the for-profit charge is just a bit higher on that threshold to have an impact to make them cause a big, maybe we'll do this somewhere else, or make it not feasible for them to go. And so I'm not 100% sure that we've nailed that yet, but I think that it's one of those things that we just have to see and monitor. And if that sort of range, we are hearing from them and seeing them not utilize our parks in a way that I think that we do want to promote, to look to adjust that, because I think the threshold of like 300 people or lower, it's very different, a group of 20 people compared to 300 people that are charging. And so the specificity, that range in there might be tweaked, but just something to keep an eye on. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Thorpe?
Thank you, Your Worship. There we go. Thank you. I'll move that Fees and Charges Amendment Bylaw 2023, number 7336.08, a bylaw to amend the fees for city parks, plazas, pavilions, amphitheaters, grounds, parking lots, and trails pass first reading.
Seconded, Councillor Hemmens. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. Councillor Thorpe?
And I will move that the bylaw pass second reading.
Seconded Councillor Perino. Any discussion? Not seeing any. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries.
And Your Worship, I'll move that the bylaw pass third reading.
Seconded Councillor Hemmons. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. Thank you. The next is the Tree Donation Program Pilot 2024. Mr. Harding.
Thank you, Worship. This is an information report for Council of kind of a refreshed or revitalized tree donation program. Over the years, we've had various types of tree programs. Ms. Davis and her crew have worked on a pilot that will help focus on some specific areas, which we want Council to be aware of. Ms. Davis is here to answer any questions, but we're excited about the tree donation program. We think it builds off a city plan really well and off of a lot of the things we've heard from groups and organizations throughout the city and the public who want to find different ways to celebrate or remember people in their lives or other events in their lives.
Thank you very much, Mr. Harding. Ms. Davis, you want to add anything?
Good evening, Worship and Council. It's an absolute pleasure to be here on Earth Day.
Oh, yes.
With this one, it's something that we hear about from members of the public quite a lot, and I think this program fills the niche quite nicely that was left behind from the bench donation program. It's a really sustainable way for people in our community to recognise people and to dedicate trees, and also for us to grow our urban forestry canopy. So we're excited to be here tonight.
Thank you very much. I must say, knowing you to be a sincere person, it just reflects well on your devotion to public service. You can say you're here with pleasure at past 10 o'clock on a Monday night, since I suspect you didn't start at 5 o'clock this afternoon. No questions? Thank you very much. Much appreciated. I think it's a good step forward. The next is E, Development Variance Permit Application Number DVP 461-3024 Barons Road. Mr. Holm, please.
Great. Thank you, Your Worship. Very briefly, this is a development variance permit to request a parking relaxation for an existing building. Properties outlined in red on the screen. The request is a reduction from required 13 stalls to 10 stalls. There are 2 commercial units in the building, and would require existing parking provided on site. The amount that can be provided is 10 versus 13. The statutory notification's taken place, and I'm happy to take any questions. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone wishing to speak to Development Variance Permit Application Number DVP 461-3024 Barons Road? Not seeing anyone. Councillor Thorpe.
Thank you, Your Worship. In that case, I will move that Council issue development permit number DVP 461 to reduce the parking requirement at 3024 Barons Road, as outlined in the proposed variance section of the staff report titled Development Variance Permit Application Number DVP 461-3024 Barons Road, dated 2024, April 22nd.
And seconded Councillor Perino. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. Thank you. The next is item F, Home Energy Retrofit Financing Feasibility Study. Mr. Holm? Or are we going straight to Ms.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Ting Pan, Manager of Sustainability, is going to present the findings of a home energy retrofit financing feasibility study that was jointly undertaken with the Regional District of Nanaimo.
Thank you very much. Ms. Pan, good evening and welcome.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. So I will attempt to summarize a 100-page study in fewer than 15 slides. So this is the home energy retrofit financing feasibility study that we undertook with the Regional District of Nanaimo. And I will just give you a bit of information on the background and what existing supports are available to homeowners right now, what financing options are being studied, and the community energy emissions inventory that we included as part of the study, and what we learned about residents' preferences and barriers. And at the end, talk a little bit about the potential building types and the retrofit packages that we could potentially include in a home retrofit financing program, and what the next steps that we're proposing. So the funding was for this study was provided by the Federation of Canadian Municipalities as a community efficient energy efficiency program. It's considered the first step towards receiving any pilot or program funding if we are to move ahead with the program delivery. The study was done, as mentioned earlier, with the Regional District of Nanaimo. So in the report, as much as possible, the consultant has done a pretty good job separating the study area, which is the entire regional district, and what is relevant just for the city of Nanaimo. And the study essentially is two projects rolled into one. One is focusing on a home energy retrofit financing feasibility study. The second part was really trying to get a better understanding of our building stock, especially the low-density residential buildings. We didn't previously have a lot of good information on. So why consider home energy retrofit financing? Residential buildings account for quite a portion of our city's energy and emissions based on 2021 data. Financing is often cited as a major barrier to home retrofits, mainly because of the upfront cost you have to first come up with in order to follow through on the renovations before you can actually receive savings. So as you can imagine, this often skewed towards people who have the resources and be able to save that large sum of money to initiate that kind of retrofit. And could be very difficult for people to save that amount to be able to enjoy the benefits. And retrofit financing typically provides low or sometimes zero interest loans for energy efficiency or low carbon home upgrades. There are a lot of existing retrofit supports, and the City of Nanaimo currently offers rebates for home energy audit rebate. We have been doing that for many years and have seen pretty steady uptake. We also offer top-up rebates to complement the Clean BC rebates that the province currently offers. Since last year, the Regional District of Nanaimo also started the Home Energy Navigator program, which we participate in and provides top-up. And this is a program that really helps homeowners to navigate this very complex kind of project management and comparing quotes, navigating, how to get rebates. So it's really it's a great service, completely free of charge to our home residents. People can call and basically get help in all the steps along a home retrofit journey. We also do a fair bit of education outreach. Other type of supports, currently there are quite a bit of supports from the provincial government through the Clean BC Better Homes program. Rebates are available, and especially for low-income households. They did have a financing program, but it just ended at the end of March of this year, fairly recently. The Canada Green Homes program is a federal program. The rebates also recently came to a close. Their financing, the zero interest financing, is still available. So getting into the financing options, so there are basically three types of financing options. The first one is called PACE, is the Property Assessed Clean Energy style kind of a loan, and that loan is fixed to the property, not individuals, and paid through property taxes. And that capital for the loan is coming from the local government or through grants. And one challenge here in BC without the PACE enabling legislation at the provincial level is that it's quite difficult to scale. As you can imagine, that it's limited by the amount of capital that you can provide. Oops, back. The second type is called direct lending. So this is similar to an unsecured consumer loan. It does require partnership and also capital from a third-party lender, such as a bank or a credit union. Its success really depends on how attractive this option is compared to other options that homeowners have access to. But because the capital is being provided by a lender, a profession like a financial institute, it is scalable and also bears less burden on local government. The third option is unbilled financing. So it is a loan paid through utility bill. This requires partnership with the utility, typically an energy utility. And the capital is being provided either by the utility or a third-party lender through a bank. It is also possible to scale. But the challenge with that one right now is that the city is not a utility, not an energy utility, unlike some other municipalities in BC. So that will require a partnership with another energy utility, which could be complex. The study basically concludes that both a pay-style loan and a direct lending are both feasible options to the city. And there is also a possibility that a regional program can be set up between the city and the regional district. But that will more likely to be a direct lending because pay-style program might not be feasible for the regional district. So in terms of if we are to have a program where to focus, and this is where the inventory comes in. So the inventory provides much more detailed information than we had before in terms of the kind of buildings that we have in the low-density residential building stock. So it analyzed the building types, the ages, their heating and cooling sources, their energy use, and GHG emissions. And you can see that in Nanaimo that we have a fairly large proportion of buildings built before 1975. So we have pretty high proportion of older buildings. And then when you look at the GHG emissions by home type, I just highlighted the 3 type of buildings that have the highest average GHG emissions. And so the highest one is the medium single-family dwelling built before 1975. And then the second and the third places belong to kind of small single-family homes built before 1975 and a medium single-family homes built between 1976 and 1995. And home heating type. So this is the chart that shows how many homes are being primarily heated by different types of energy source. So 60% of our homes are heated by electricity primarily. And then we have just under a third of homes heated by natural gas, and then we have a smaller portion heated by heating oil, propane, and wood. In terms of energy use, more than half is by electricity, about a third is coming from natural gas, 5% from heating oil, and a small portion from propane and wood. But when it comes to GHG emissions, it really shifts. You can see that even though more than half of the energy is being supplied by electricity, its GHG impact is very small due to its very low emission factor. And whereas here, you can see that the natural gas, even though it is only about a third of the energy being provided by natural gas, but they represent double the amount of GHGs in their share. And oil heating similarly has a disproportionate impact on GHGs. It's nearly 3 times the share in terms of their GHG impact. And this one looks at kind of the average energy consumption per home. The red rectangle boxes highlights the data for just the city. So in general, you can see that overall, homes are becoming more energy efficient and use less energy, and especially in space heating. The technology, the building are getting more efficient and airtight, and so you can see that drop of energy use for space heating. Not so much for light and appliances, and also similarly for hot water, have not changed very much. And part of the study also includes homeowner survey to try to understand the barriers and their preferences. So the survey included, we got over 1,000 responses. These are done online and also through phone. And the majority of the respondents live in the city of Nanaimo, mostly in detached or semi-detached homes. And you can see the majority of the considerations have to do with the financial support. And so there are a lot of residents anticipate needing financial support in order to complete retrofits, very concerned about inflation cost, and are reluctant to take on more debt, which is not surprising in this high interest, high inflation kind of environment. When we ask homeowners to identify barriers, any factors discouraging them from undertaking retrofit projects, the financial concerns dominate the responses as captured in the orange bracket. And the red brackets, kind of the secondary concerns, those are actually the concerns that we can address through the Home Energy Navigator program. So those are non-financial concerns. But we also recognize that there is a small portion of residents who are really unsure. They are willing to take on more debt to invest in home energy retrofits, but not sure if they will qualify in a kind of a conventional consumer loan. In terms of their willingness to invest in retrofits, so this shows the percentage of homeowners thinking about how much they would want to invest. So we see 20% of them, for those who are able to answer this question, are looking at a fairly small amount. It's up to $10,000. And then you have the next tier, 17% of the respondents thinking between $10,000 to $20,000. So this kind of covers the majority of the cost for basically energy system upgrades. Based on the study, when we look at the cost, is usually between $10,000 to $30,000. And we also asked whether they would consider making home energy improvements as part of a borrowing program offered by the local government, and we have about 30% of the respondents saying yes, they will consider that. The other interesting insight is it kind of confirms our observation in some way that, we have 28% of the respondents in the region that says they have already installed a heat pump. But we also have the same proportion of the respondents saying that they're planning to do so fairly soon. And what's interesting is that we also have 28% of respondents saying that they have just recently upgraded their furnace and boiler for high efficiency, which really represent a missed opportunity because they're unlikely to actually change their energy system anytime soon if they have done so recently. But we are also pleased to see that there are fewer respondents that are planning to do furnace and boiler upgrades in the future. The consultant looked at 30 key residential archetypes based on the age, their heating types, and different configurations, and then focused 10 retrofit packages that will give us the biggest impacts, and it did further analysis and modeling to be able to figure out how much savings that they could generate and what is their GHG reduction potential, what is the cost associated with those retrofit packages. And so they have generated this fairly comprehensive table on, I think, page 56 that kind of laid out, all the important information that could help us design our program. The GHG savings, the greatest opportunity is definitely in the oil and gas to heat pump conversions in the older buildings, but the cost savings is the greatest really for oil conversion. And we still have about 1,500 homes on heating oil in the city. So in terms of the next step, if council directs us to proceed with program design, we'll get confirmation with the RDN if a regional program is supportable. And we will likely do some further analysis to narrow down what retrofit packages that could be included in a program like that. And if we pursue direct lending option, then we will probably have legal review and meeting with potential financial institution partners. And then the next step will be to complete FCM program design requirements in order to submit an application for additional funding support. And we plan to bring back report on the cost and the details of the program. So I'm happy to answer any questions, and I believe that David Stewart, our environment planner, was also online and happy to answer any questions since he was the project manager for the project.
Thank you very much. Councillor Gesselbrock.
Thanks, Mayor. Through you, thank you so much for the very detailed report and the summary of the studies there. Just a question. So if we go ahead with this, will you be investigating both the PACE style program and the direct lending, or just the direct lending?
Through your lordship, I think that both are on the table right now. I think they have their own pros and cons. So they will be targeting different segment of our homeowners. So I think that we'll be looking at both.
Okay, great. And I guess, have we been tracking sort of, would it change things if the province, I don't know if you've been tracking the conversation with the province coming with their PACE program, but is that something that is, could be an influencing factor if, say, for example, they could be coming up with a PACE program, or if we went direct lending, we could then, if they came on the PACE program, and do something on that line as well? It will be helpful if the province has enabling legislation and a couple of fronts. It could really streamline the administrative burden, so that will be a consideration, because if we are to develop a PACE program, it will likely take more staff resource. And the other factor is that if we do have PACE enabling legislation, it could remove or maybe enable local governments to borrow for this particular purpose. But we have received no indication as to when that might happen, even though it is in the Clean BC plan. Yeah, that was really hard to plan around. Great. No, thank you very much.
Thank you. Seeing no further questions, there's a recommended motion. Anyone care to make it? Moved Councillor Eastmere, seconded Councillor Hemmons. Any discussion? Councillor Perino.
Thank you, Your Worship. Excellent document. Thank you very much, and good presentation. I really appreciated it. However, I won't be voting in favor of this, Your Worship. I think when we talk about the options as it's listed, establishing a financing program will likely take considerable staff time and resources. And I just don't feel that at this time we could spend any more money on something that definitely I would like to take a look at it again, even on a yearly basis, to see where we are. But at this point, our taxes are so high, I just don't see the interest in this at this time. The document was quite clear. People will do it if they can. If they can't, they won't. I can't support it right now, but I am willing to look at it in another year or two. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Manley.
Yeah, just so Clean BC in their plan, they do have a PACE program that they're going to work on developing. Is that correct?
Yes, the PACE legislation was part of the Clean BC plan. And it just, we have not received any update on the progress of that piece of legislation. And if I may follow up on just on the cost, I think we will probably be heavily relying on grant through the Canadian, the Federation of Canadian Municipalities, and we also unlikely to actually rely on any taxation for a program like this.
So the program would be paid for through a FCM grant?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you for that. I'm very supportive.
Thank you. Councillor Gesselbrock.
Thank you. Just want to say that, we've set very clear goals about reducing our greenhouse gas emissions. The emissions from our current building stock is an important area to need to address, and I think this program directly addresses that. And, it's a fair and equitable way to support community members in retrofitting their homes. So I'm pleased to support this. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no further questions, all those in favor? Any opposed? Opposed, Councillors Armstrong, Thorpe, and Perino. Motion carries. Thank you very much. Ms. Pan, thank you for the work. The next is development permit application number DB DP 1326-1950 and 1960 Island Diesel Way. Mr. Home, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just very briefly, a development permit for a new industrial complex, Island Diesel Way off Boxwood. The proposal includes 6 units of pre-engineered steel buildings. The design, there's renderings on attachment E, if you could bring those up, please, just to demonstrate what the project looks like. The project includes glass and steel awnings, textures and colors to differentiate the units and to define the entranceways. Minor variances requested to landscape buffer and a variance to the setback for a refuse receptacle, but a good addition to the industrial building area in that area of the city adjacent to Green Rock that has been very popular and good to see more industrial buildings going in there. Thank you. I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you very much. I'm not seeing any questions. Anyone care to move the recommended motion? Moved Councillor Eastmere, seconded Councillor Hemmons. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. Thank you. And item I, Form and Character Development Permit Guidelines Project. Mr. Holm, are you handing it to Ms. Brinkman?
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll just briefly touch on this, and if you so wish, Ms. Brinkman's happy to speak to it, just given the time. I'll take your direction on that. But this is a 2024 joint project between the current planning group led by Ms. Rowett and then Ms. Brinken with the community planning team. This is coming out of City Plan and as well as, or following up on City Plan and working on implementing some of the integrated action plan priority initiatives. And we thought it would be given that we're proposing to proceed with engagement in May on the project. This was timely to come to update council on the project. I think the staff report speaks to the project in detail. If you so please, Ms. Brinkman can add further. So.
Thank you very much, Ms. Brinkman. You should say something. You've had to stay here till 10:30 for heaven's sakes, even if it's just good night.
Thank you, Your Worship. Only just to say that, yeah, we do intend to have a Get Involved page, and invitations and promotion for the public events would happen in late May, and the events are scheduled for late June. So a general public event, a neighborhood association event, and hosting workshops for the development community, the design advisory panel, and the advisory committee on accessibility and inclusiveness. And so we're looking forward to getting input on the DP guidelines and having this project. DP guidelines provide certainty for the development community and the public to have the best quality development in the city. So, yeah, any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Thank you very much. Appreciate the update. Not seeing any questions. We have no bylaws. Councillor Perino's given us a notice of motion that council directs staff to provide an update with respect to the new pickleball courts at Bevan Park and options to reduce impact of the Beaufort Park courts in advance of the new courts opening, and we will consider that at a future council meeting. Thank you very much. Under other business, we have 2 pieces of correspondence, which everyone has had a chance to see. If there's no questions arising from that, on to question period. Ms. Gurry. We have Jennifer. It looks like Catkins, but I'm not sure. Meeting rules stated by Krogh. I'm going to allow the question, although it's hardly a matter of the real agenda, but go ahead, please.
I have a question about rewinding back to the beginning of this meeting and several others where you have very firmly said, no clapping, no jeering in this room. In this room. You announced that we're on the territories, and the next thing you're announcing is a plaque for somebody. Every one of you were clapping to make someone feel good. You were clapping and you just said, no, there will be absolutely no clapping.
Do you have a question?
Why are you have double standards?
Oh, thank you. You know, Ms. Catkins, it's late and I'm going to try and be as patient as I possibly can. The fact that you begrudge Mr. Sims, who's been given a significant award, a round of applause from the council members to whom he has to report constantly, and you, sir, would you please stop acting like a juvenile? Honestly, this is getting a bit tiresome. So you've made your point. Thank you very much for coming tonight. I'm sure it was worth waiting here till 10:30 to say that.
No, there's a clock.
The next
here.
question
There's
is
a
Dan
clock
Hula.
here. If
Next
somebody comes
question
up,
is Dan Hula, pedestrian safety, South End 10B1. Mr. Hula, are you still here?
So preamble first, regarding the presentation asking for sidewalks for children walking to school. Given that the city has gone from building a new public works building, I don't know how much it should cost, maybe 20 million, to upgrading it to a gold standard operational center with this amazing data surveillance center. Now it's estimated maybe 46 million just for phase one. I'm curious how council will respond when the first child does get run over. It would be sad if all they do is put up a little coffin sign with the kid's name that says, sorry for your loss, but you should see the new operational center. So my question is this: is council willing to consider, just to consider, to forego some of the luxury items on the operational center that should have only been a public works center to fund the sidewalks and possibly save children's lives?
Thank you, Mr. Hula, for your question. I think you have been here long enough, and I'm sure you might have been present and able to hear the commentary that Mr. Sims related from two outside folks who looked at the project, and as the language I recall was, there's no jewelry on this. So the construction of a public works center that you're suggesting, the very premise of your question is not accurate, and appreciate your suggestion about that. Decisions council has to make every day respecting matters of safety and public safety, including those of the workers who work in our city. Thank you. Next question is Mr. Annesley, 8B.
Hello, Council. I'm during the presentation on 8B, it suggested that we had housing starts of single detached, I believe, of 300 in 2014, and last year it was down to 124. Now, living in Nanaimo after the financial crisis of 2008, we had a flatlining and sort of a declining market up until about 2015. So my question is, why did we have 300 housing starts in 2014 and 124 in 2023 when we have a hot market compared to a flatline market?
Sorry, I didn't catch all of it. Was that related to single-family dwellings?
Well, yes.
Yes, okay.
But we did see it. We did see an increase in the density projects. But why are we seeing such a significant decrease in housing starts when we are promoting or wanting significant increases in housing?
Yeah, a very good question and worthy of an answer as well. The reason is really quite simple. The cost of real estate itself, the land, is so high that it doesn't make sense for the private development community to put up single-family dwellings. The cost means that you're going to have a single-family dwelling that will be extraordinarily expensive. You'll have a limited market. The reason apartments are being built and townhouses and even, if we're lucky, the odd duplex, is because it makes more economic sense to use that land appropriately. And I think you'll find similar statistics all over the place. It's just a question of the marketplace.
So we've seen a significant decline in single-detached housing sales in Nanaimo in that period, or have we seen an increase in that period?
You're seeing a decline over time. I think the graphs were quite clear. You're seeing a decline over time of building permits issued for single-family dwellings on single-family lots. What you are seeing is a significant increase, and Mr. Lindsay can confirm or advise, a significant increase in the number of multi-residential buildings, whether they be apartments or condominiums. And the reason is simply land cost.
Okay, so that is a private issue and not a government restriction issue?
No, it has nothing to do with restrictions.
Okay, so, because I see in city plan, we're trying to go away from single detached housing, but I feel like that's an asinine policy, just given the fact that we need more housing, right?
We are encouraging densification because people need places to live. And if you want everyone, and maybe in a perfect world, everyone living in a single family dwelling in a single family lot, we'd have to expand the size of the city considerably. And that's not either reasonable or practical in the 21st century. But developers are free to go ahead, as is any private or property owner, and attempt to create single-family dwelling subdivisions. But the reality is they're not, because they can make more money by developing densification on existing real estate in the city.
So
Okay?
you would be for that then, more?
Sorry?
You're for more single detached housing then, basically is what you're saying. If a developer would come along, you're for that.
If a developer comes to the city with a proposal, Mr. Lindsay, you can help me here. If a developer comes, Councillor Armstrong,
A
comes
prime
to the
example is the Sandstone development. They're bringing lots of single-family homes. And the next one that we're coming up to next is going to be the one on the old Green Thumb. And the majority there are, I think there's like 2,400 single-family homes and then apartments as well. So it's whatever the developer wants to bring. We're not opposing it. Like if there's 5 lots and somebody wants to put in 5 single homes, I'm sure they will be approved. If they want to put in 5 duplexes, it would be approved. 4plexes, 6plexes. It's what the developer wants. We don't control that.
Okay, so in Sandstone, there are single development?
It's
I thought it was
mostly.
all.
Mostly.
Okay, thank you.
And the final question, Mr. Hula, again, home energy retrofit 12C.
Yes. And thank you for recognizing that us questioners have also sat here and have worked all day and done everything, and we're tired too, but we're still trying to follow your rules about being respectful to each other. And that wasn't the case with the first speaker.
That's a matter of opinion, sir, and I'm not going to get into an argument about it.
Good.
Ask your question.
To Mr. Holm here, when you're doing your surveys on all the
question comes to council, sir, not to members.
Okay, for you then, because it was presented by him, so I thought it should be addressed to him. Are you guys getting to the point where you can consider some people are not wanting to go electric because they realize that, one, who is investing in all the electric companies and making profit at a federal level, and who it's coming from the FCM, and also that, again, like I showed last meeting, the whole greenhouse gas thing is not valid. So it's a consideration of, are you, when you look at the big picture of why people are reluctant, the cost is exorbitant, but beyond that, there are many people who are going, maybe all those things that we were told were not true, especially since the evidence is overwhelming.
I'm sorry, was there a question in there?
Yeah, the question is there consideration that there's things beyond the criteria of the survey that are not being considered, like people's attitudes towards greenhouse gases as a problem and the control of who is funding all of this and why? Like there's other elements that were not listed in the survey as reasons why people would not be jumping up and down to go get electric, because they know that can be switched off with a switch, but if you have a wood-burning stove, you have, it's like this pressure
I'm
to
sorry,
make
but
people...
your concept of a question and mine are somewhat different. If you're asking us, did the survey contain questions that relate to what you're trying to raise? I didn't see the survey, can't honestly answer that question. Ms. Pan, I suspect, has gone home.
In his presentation, he posted the survey, and it said the reasons why. And my question was, can there be a consideration that maybe that survey wasn't the truth and the whole truth, that there's other reasons why people aren't willing to participate in that?
I take your point. It's not a question, really. It's a suggestion, but I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think we are at the time for a motion for adjournment. Moved Councillor Perino, seconded Councillor Manley. All those in favor, any opposed?